Welcome to Biggest Geekus. We're your host. I'm Randy.
And I'm Joe.
This is episode 32 of our podcast. The date is April 14th, 2021.
Yes.
How are you, Giuseppe? What's new with you?
I'm feeling creative. And I'm feeling combative.
Oh, good. Me too. We're going to fight
Not that
today.
I want to punch somebody.
Oh, sad.
Not with my fists. I'd rather punch them with my ideas.
Ooh, idea punch. Because that's hard to defend against. Unless you are strong-willed.
If do correct,
no can defense. Yep, right.
That's probably naughty that we said it that way. But
why? Oh, because it's... Oh, who cares? I don't give a crap. We'll get to that negative.
Linguistic appropriation.
We'll get to that on our new little segment at the end. Oh yeah, we'll talk about that poop. Anywho, we got some call-ins. Butch from our boy Jason and John Allen from Red Dice gave us a holla.
Yes.
All right, man. You want to get that set up? It's pretty exciting. Oh, before you even get to that, let me tell about this. So I finally got my Deadlands box set. You know, the one that I bought the big all-in one, the Kickstarter. And this week or last week, they said, we've only shipped the last 300. And I'm like, I haven't gotten mine yet. And then I checked my FedEx and it's like due on Monday. And I'm like, man, it better show. And sure enough, it did. I opened it all up today, though. I had to wait. Those were busy the last couple of days and opened it all up. I'm not the dice trays. I've never been like a huge fan of them.
Yeah.
But the one I got for Deadlands, it's legit, dude. It's leather. It's really nice. And it's got the Deadlands logo. I got these little counters that are shaped like ore pieces for Ghost Rock pieces. I mean, just you could use them as bennies. And then I got all this crap. I was like, man, it's so cool. And you get they don't have, I thought it was going to be plastic minis. It's not. It's cardboard, but they got a real sheen on them. They're really nice. So I'm pretty excited about those minis too. So happy with that box set.
Groovy. So, once the money starts flowing again in the Harden household, I'm going to get into maybe buying some older things. I learned about something called the Grand Temple of Jing.
Yep.
And that's been made a few different times.
I think there's a Pathfinder version. There's old school version. There's a couple of them.
I'm thinking I'm probably going to get, I'm thinking about the old school. There's a D20. It has the D20 label from back in the day.
Yeah.
It was on eBay for $50.
I think it's a mega.
It's a mega dungeon. Yeah.
Yeah.
And what I'm thinking is maybe starting the Cabin Con after I get it is to I was thinking perhaps doing mega dungeon every night.
That would be cool.
As long as people wanted to play, we just, slog. I won't call it a slog because it'll be fun.
Oh yeah, we'll have a good time.
Yeah.
That's cool. That'd be fun to talk about the Cabin Con thing too. But yeah, it was pretty cool that I got this week. And I also got a paper copy of it's a weird thing. It's the White Box by Mythmere Publishing. So the Swords and Wizardry White Box, I'll get the free PDF, but I ordered on eBay. It's actually a booklet of the White Box. So this is, that's what I'm running for my old school. I'm not running the original Dungeons and Dragons because as I looked at it, I was like, this is kind of screwy to run. Mm-hmm. And I think the White Box by Swords and Wizardry really cleaned it up and made it, it's still very close to the same. Every weapon does a D6 damage or maybe +1 or -1. That's it. So I can't wait for you to try that game. It's going to be, I think even for an old grognard like us, I think we're going to be like there was some eye-opening stuff when I was reading it. So anywho, all right. So we're going to fire up them call-ins, listen to Jason and John Allen.
Yes, we're going to start off with Jason, who, rattled off like a machine gun.
Dude, that's what I love about that guy. He's always fully locked and loaded.
So. Oh, no. You distracted me. I was about to share the screen, and then you started talking about your dang box.
Well, my beauty throws people off, Joe. It's always been like that.
Not that box.
Oh, what box? Oh. Lance box, yo. Hit us, Jason.
You are very picky.
I like to hear it, yeah.
The initial part of your...
It's happening, I believe.
Hey guys, Jason here. Just want to respond to the questions you asked me during the initial part of your Gamer and Gamer Mindsets episode. So, yeah, most of the games I play, because they're online, do tend to be 3 to 4 hour sessions, unfortunately, or anywhere between 2 and 4 hours. Most of them closer to 2 to 3 hours. It's just a nature of the beast, unfortunately. Like I said, I'd much rather play, and my son and I do play board games and things at home. But as far as RPGs, we don't have a local group, so and we've done one-on-one a little bit. We'd like to do one-on-one a little more, but even our work schedules are a little bit conflicting sometimes, so it's tough. But yeah, so most of my stuff's online, and they're fairly short sessions. I am in one game that's pretty long term, and that's that Broken Lands. I mentioned that Beckme game where we're using Orc Cathar. That Carl Rodriguez, who runs that, has been running it for years.
That's pretty cool.
Sounds like Jason would like to play in longer games than just like us, 2 to 4 hours. I mean, it scratches the itch barely, but kind of want to push it more towards 6. Kind of like that last 13th age game we ran.
Right. And also, I had a thought, but it like other thoughts, they just jump out of my old noggin.
Write it down.
Well, I just had it, and while you were talking, it took a hike.
Old man-itis.
Yeah. So we'll just keep on going.
Yeah, hit us, Jason. Come on.
I say years. It's been running for 2 or 3 years now, and I joined in after it started, but I've been with that group for at least a year now. And like I say, every now and then we'll take a break. So it's the same players, but we'll take a break and plug something else in, play a couple sessions of something else, then go back to the Orc Cathar. Go back to that Broken Lands game and play that some more. And that's a neat game because it's a more of a political game. We're effectively a mercenary band, but we've got a bunch of hirelings. We have a whole troop of like goblin archers, and we have some like bugbear shock troops and stuff. And there's a goblin kingdom, and then there are dwarves and humans on the outskirts. And we're doing missions and doing different things, and sometimes just the PCs, and sometimes like if we have to attack something or whatever, we'll take our mercenary force with us. And so it's a lot of factions, a lot of political stuff in there too. So that's a real fun game. But that's a long-term game.
Interesting politics with orcs.
It still sounds like fun because that's kind of I've always I've had a lot of players that talked about wanting to be like leaders in an army and actually have a force of soldiers they could take with them to do things. I think if you made the game at least say 50% action and 50% political machinations and dealings, it wouldn't be horrible, especially if it could be some really cool stuff that you don't only get to do. Like, you're playing an 8th or 9th level fighter and you get to lead 50 men on a mission to do a strike force or do this, or defend the keep. And that's pretty cool, actually. I wonder if Jason would be, if he had a face-to-face game that would last 4 to 6 hours every other week. Because I think he said last week he only gets to play every other week about 15 hours total for the month, right? Is that what he said? 5 games.
I thought it was
15 hours every 2 weeks.
A week.
Every 2 weeks, I think.
Okay.
He said anything. I could be wrong, but yeah, he does play a lot. I wonder if he'd back. So here's a question for him. I want to keep trying to get Jason calling in. If he had a face-to-face group that met at his time schedule for 4 to 6 hours, got a good solid session in every other week or whatever, would he cut back on his online playing?
That's interesting. Yeah.
It does sound like he's got a long-term game though with that Carlos guy.
Right. And, that probably formed out of necessity and just kept going because, they established friendships and whatnot. That's what it sounds like.
Oh, sure.
And same thing with John Allen Large. He has the same issue with not having a local group. So he has to play online if he's going to play.
We are extremely blessed in that area.
Right.
We have about 20 guys. We could call it a drop of a hat and start a game.
That's
pretty awesome.
That would be a wild game if we all got together at the same time and tried to play at the same time.
With old school,
might be able to pull it off.
That's halfway tempting, dude. Once a month, whoever can make it, we're playing.
Right.
15 of you, let's do it. Roll initiative. That'd be kind of cool. That'd be kind of crazy. Yeah.
As far as problems with the game groups, not really. You know, it's funny. I say social gamer, and it's kind of like a social drinker, right? But and that actually is what I mean to get across when I say social gamer is for you to think a social drinker. But and I know you guys aren't big drinkers, and I won't hold that against you. But yeah, I don't know. There are definitely systems I like and systems I don't like, and there are certain gaming things I like better than others. But for the most part, I mainly enjoy the interaction. I enjoy the interpersonal interaction in games. So I'll play just about anything, even if I don't like the system. You know, I'll suck it up to enjoy playing with the people. And I do get along with most people. I have one of those personalities. I can kind of get along with most people. I don't know. I'd have to think about that. Have I ever left any groups because I didn't like the group?
Thank you, Jason, for being so gracious. Vis-a-vis our drinking habits.
Yes, that's really cool. We don't drink, and he's okay with it. I was nervous about that.
Yeah.
That's cool.
I don't think so. I have, because the way online gaming is and because the way schedules are, I have picked groups over other groups. But, you know, I have picked Group A over Group B. But if Group A wasn't there, I would still play with Group B because I tend to get, like I say, I tend to get along with most people. And most gamers, regardless of what you hear the haters say, most gamers are good people. And I know, I'm sure there are bad actors out there on all political spectrums, but honestly, I have not encountered a lot of bad people in gaming online. Pretty much everybody I've encountered online and game with have been pretty cool. This goes back to G Plus days. I, was an active member in G Plus, but I've had good experiences gaming online. I really have. And yeah, I get along with most groups. So I guess that's enough prattling on for me, so let me list the rest of your episode.
Well, I have to say, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
I have to say that for the most part, with few exceptions, I haven't had any real problems with gamers at the table.
No more than one hand in my lifestyle. And in my lifetime, have I had gamers that I'd be like, dude, I would not want to play with this guy ever again.
Right.
Super rare. I agree.
Yeah.
Listen to the main body of your show. I had to stop before you talked about the Call of Cthulhu games because life intruded. Darn you, life. But I can't disagree with the games you've talked about so far, at least the games I played. Palladium Fantasy is definitely worth checking out. So the system, like all Palladium systems, is really wonky because it's skill-based and the skills, yeah, it's what it is. But that said, the Palladium Fantasy world is really cool and worth taking from. The Palladium Fantasy world, you have Wolven, which are like these, it's like Imperial Rome, but they're these like werewolves. It's actually a really cool setting. I really like Palladium Fantasy, actually. That's got a soft spot in my heart. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Other Strangeness has a soft spot in my heart. The system isn't great, but the game, just all Palladium games, like the settings are awesome, just the system's a little bit wonky. But I'll listen to the rest and call you back later.
Yeah,
go ahead.
That's my assessment too. I think I've even said it on the podcast. I love the Palladium settings, like riffs, and all of the setting material that I've ever read. I've always liked. Mm-hmm. It's just been the rules have been kind of not my favorite.
And it's funny he mentioned the Wolfen. I remember seeing them and thought they were kind of cool because I don't remember if they're overpowered or not, but I thought, wow, a player race that's kind of werewolf-like, but I don't think they turn people like into wolves. I think it's just they're wolf people. Maybe. But I know our friends Patrick and Jeff, they're pretty fond of Palladium. And you said you have that book, right? The first edition?
I have the second edition.
Okay.
I believe. I have it right here.
You may have to mind that, dude. Do you?
May have to. It's called Revised.
Oh, it might be second. I don't have a clue. Can you pick it up? I'd like to see it. Oh, okay. I've seen that. Yeah.
It has a different cover, I think.
Okay.
But yeah.
That's cool. Yeah, you probably we should probably try to mine that. Probably get some good nuggets in there.
Probably so.
Okay, Vampire, Call of Cthulhu, your dark games there. So I play Call of Cthulhu, really enjoy it. The game I want to try is Unknown Armies. I would change it up a little bit because I'm not totally on board with the game's mythology, but I think Unknown Armies is one of the better versions of the BRP system, the Chaos system, and I'd really like to give that a shot. I think Unknown Armies is a second edition I'm talking about, not the abortion that's third edition, but Unknown Armies second edition looks pretty cool. I've never played Vampire. So in the 90s, I hung out with folks that did the LARPing and stuff, and I was in the SCA, which wasn't LARPing. It was LARPing, but we did that. But anyway, I knew guys that did the vampire stuff and werewolf stuff, and that was cool. But I never did it, and I've never played tabletop games, so I really can't talk about the any of the White Wolf games. But let's move on to your next category.
Yeah. So, SCA is LARPing, but kind of a cool LARPing. They literally fight with swords. Now, not like metal, but they do like kind of some cool simulation.
Right. And they do have, I remember talking with a few people, I think it was when I was stationed in Oklahoma.
Mm-hmm.
At least the local
chapter
SCA, they have a kind of royalty.
Yeah.
Simulated royalty, and there are some real life personality conflicts that play into how things go down.
Oh, that's not cool.
Right. I don't know how prevalent that is, but I imagine, considering people are people, sometimes people feel self-important, so it's probably more than it ought to be. But
yeah, it seemed like when I was in Bloomington, Indiana University, every year I would see the SCA recruit people, and I thought it looked kind of cool, but I didn't know I would have time for it. And they're all dressed up in the armor. And I'd see them do some of their stuff out in some of the spaces out in the yards and across campus, but I never really. I can't say I was all that interested in joining, but it was kind of neat to see.
When I thought about it, I was inquiring about, well, how much does this stuff cost that I would need to have to participate? Yeah. And I was like, well, I can't afford that crap.
Right.
I mean, I could have started, get it piecemeal,
mm-hmm.
but it just seemed a lot of money for something I wasn't. They were going to have to do a little bit better sale on me at that point.
Yeah.
To get me to buy in.
I was a college kid, man. There's no way I was going to pay for that.
No.
Yep.
Okay, your next category is narrative, or I guess people call them story games, things like Power by the Apocalypse, Amber, all those kind of things. So I've played a number of these. Power by the Apocalypse, I've played Monster of the Week, Dungeon World, and what are we playing now? Masks we're playing now, which is like teenage superheroes. And it's fine. It's definitely different. I've never played Fate. I like to play Fate. I'm more of a mechanical player than a story player, to be honest. I'm much more of a task-oriented player than a tell-the-story kind of player. I can do either and enjoy either, but I'd rather just do the task resolution kind of thing like you have in D&D. So, Battle Lords, maybe I misrepresented it, and I apologize. I'm going to run it here at some point, and I'll have more comments after I run it, of course. But Battle Lords isn't that crunchy. It's not like Phoenix Command.
Right. So I'm pretty much on the same wavelength with Jason there as far as story game versus otherwise. I love getting involved in the story that kind of emerges through play.
Right.
But I don't think there is. I mean, you can try to evince a story and try to, as a DM, and try to, everybody kind of tell a story, and then the gameplay parts are secondary. But I don't care for that too much. I
was listening to these guys. The Adventuring Party, I think, is the podcast. Might want to give that a listen. These guys from Ireland, and they're D&Ders, and they talked today about. And there's a couple of comments like, like I told you, try to evoke a certain feel. I think I mentioned last week in the in the Sanctuary game, I was trying to evoke a certain feel. But as a DM, there's only so much you can do. The players have to buy into it. And honestly, I like RP probably more than Joe. I like a little play acting probably more than Joe. But I do like the task resolution. I like the idea of let's get into a fight, let's roll some dice, and then let's resolve it, and then let's kind of RP. And you can do a little RP into a fight, but not too much. I mean, I definitely like those tasks. I think I prefer those tasks almost separate. Let's fight, let's play the game part, then let's talk about it as story.
Right. And that's yeah, I get that. Battle Lords, I think if I said anything about being a little crunchy, I don't think it was from Jason. It was more from an interview with the new version of Battle Lords, one of the contributors.
Oh, he was making it sound like it was crunchy.
Yeah, the way he made it sound was very crunchy. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Or, what other systems were super crunchy? Time Lords, that system was pretty crunchy. Tri-tax systems like Bureau 13, Stalking Night Fantastic, that was pretty crunchy. It's not crunchy like those games, right? Or Morrow Project, if you ever played the Morrow Project. It's not crunchy like those games are. There's some front-loaded stuff building the character, but Rollmaster has that too. In fact, you can maybe compare it like the Rollmaster, I guess. I don't know. It's not bad. The combat went really quickly, and it's not too bad as far as the gun stats or any of that, because it's sci-fi. And there's a lot of cool things in there. So you have glue guns and freeze guns and disintegrators, and so you have different effects. And the different guns will affect armor differently, which is why they have the different stats for the armor and all. But yeah, it's a little detailed, but the quick start was a lot of fun.
You know, makes that sound.
Huh?
Yeah, glue. I'm sorry. Go ahead. I was going to say.
Go ahead.
I was going to say glue guns, freeze guns. That I love that, because that makes a science fiction game start to sound. It starts to feel a little more like magic.
Right.
You know, and I'm kind of like, I could really dig that. Then I have a harder time when you're like, well, we're using this. Like, remember in what game we were playing? I didn't know what a rail gun was, and you guys had to tell me what that meant.
Yeah.
Because isn't a rail gun like fired by magnetic? Using magnetism.
Gun, essentially.
Yeah, and it's cool, but I hate when it gets too technical just because I'm not in the know. I don't hate the idea of playing a more military assault group, modern day game, but I just don't know the lingo, and I feel out of depth. I mean, I know how to fire a gun, a shotgun, and a pistol. I've done both, but I'm just like, I'm not a gun dude.
It can get deep.
Yeah, I'm not that skilled.
Right, but when you said glue gun, it reminded me of my days in Champions.
Oh, yeah.
When I was able to make a character, basically, you glued everybody, basically just put them in a cocoon of glue and didn't care how powerful you were, just, you were stuck. And that might have been one of two things, maybe just design problem with the game, or it was our interpretation might have been a little off, but at the power level, the point level, whatever it was we were at,
it was awesome.
Oh yeah, and it's a cheap power, because it's not like flashy. It's not like teleportation or gravity powers or anything like that. It's just you have a device and it has glue in it. It's not like I shot glue from my hand and created out of thin air. You have a device, and that makes the power cheaper than otherwise.
That's not too far from your doctor from Rippers, who had the amber gun like the dude from Fringe.
Right.
It was a gun, but he created amber. If anybody's seen the Fringe TV show, Joe's character had a gun that had the power, one of the powers in Savage, I forgot what it was. Basically, it froze people, and he described it as covering them in amber. That was pretty cool.
I like that.
Mm-hmm.
But all the games that he just mentioned at the very beginning of that particular message, I've never heard of.
Yeah, a lot of new stuff.
Yeah. Of course, Rollmaster, have heard of that, but the other ones,
yeah,
no frame of reference.
Which one are we on? Okay.
And with Swords Without Master and with Great Power, the dice are pretty much just used to decide. Basically, you pass the torch to each other, who's telling the story, and then you use the dice to tell whether it's kind of an upbeat part of the story or more of a downbeat part of the story. So, like I say, it's pretty far from RPGs. But those are probably the furthest from RPGs I've gone as far as light games go. Okay, let me go back to your show.
All righty,
Cool.
let's just move along. Do you have
Yep.
anything to say about that? I don't.
Nope.
Okay, I'm an hour and 48 minutes in, and I'm pausing this during your GM styles or game styles thing to comment. For the most part, I agree with what you guys are saying. I do think players are sovereign, but I think GM is more or less God. The GM's a player, but the GM's not just a player. And, it's fine for the GM to adjust things. But you just gave the example of the players decide to go through the tunnels, the sewers, and the GM hadn't thought about that. Should the GM roll to see if the villain thought about that? And I think that's interesting because you have, like you mentioned, and I cut you off before you finished talking about it, but the rule of cool is a real thing. And I think the rule of cool is important because we're playing these games to have fun, and the rule of cool is fun. But sometimes it can totally derail a session. So you have to balance that.
I agree. I think the rule of cool is a good idea. I think it gets overused though. And I think some people abuse it just to get away with stuff. But Jason's right. I think it's generally a thing. I would err on the side of cool when I can.
Sure. And I think that there's a difference between, let's say you have discovered the back door, so to speak, to a dungeon,
right,
to a lair or something. And the ruler or controller of that region is very intelligent, and his personality is he's very meticulous and all that stuff. That's the kind of person who you would make a roll for or decide that they have covered their weak spots.
Right.
But if it's a tribe of marauders like orcs or giants, even giants aren't that smart.
Yeah, some hill giant chieftain. He's not that smart.
He might forget about it. He might not even think about any of that stuff. So it would depend on the situation. So rule of cool, but tempered.
Yeah.
Crap. I lost the last recording, so hopefully this is going to make sense. Anyhow, rule of cool. So I agree that if when you get to that point where the players are in the sewers and they kind of derail your plan because you didn't think about that, do we roll to see if the villain thought about it? Interesting concept. I was running a Space Cowboy game, and in that game, basically it was based off Roger Corman's, is it Forbidden Planet? I think that's anyway, it's a space movie copied off Aliens, synth music score. Anyhow, in the game, biomed facility on the planet creates a monster, it escapes, it's killing livestock and things, and the players are intergalactic troubleshooters sent to figure out what's going on. So they end up finding this hole that was burned through the side of the building, the biomed facility, and they confront the main scientist, and he's, and I hadn't expected this exact confrontation. The players they really took on this mantle of, hey, you're basically Galactic Texas Rangers, and you have full authority, you can do what you want. And the players really, grabbed onto that, which was great. But I wasn't expecting them to grab onto it quite so hard. So they're pushing hard against this main scientist. And so I had him grab a cylinder that looked kind of like a fire extinguisher off the wall and hold it up to him and say, well, I use this. It's a nerve gas dispenser, and it chased the monster away. And this will defeat the monster, right? And this is why it ran away, ran through the wall. And so the players just took it and went off to confront the monster without ever checking it.
That's hilarious.
That's a recipe for disaster. Yep.
Let's see. Am I there?
Well, the bad guy was lying. It was just a fire extinguisher. And I kind of decided that on the cuff, spur of the moment kind of thing. But if the players had said, hey, I want to read the writing on the cylinder, or the players had said, I want to do a test burst to out of this thing to see what it does, I totally would have let them figure out it was a fire extinguisher. It wasn't going to be a screw you thing. But because they didn't check it, hey, when they tried it on the monster, it didn't work so good. And one of the players, I think, got an arm bit off or something. But, it was one of those things that, even though the players were doing the rule of cool kind of thing, the villains can still pull stuff out of their butt. And if the players aren't going to be paying attention and ask questions, it can still kind of bite them in the tuchus, right? So, but for the most part, if the players come up with a cool way to circumvent something, I'll let them do it. Because it's not going to destroy the adventure. Because I kind of riff off what they do anyway.
That's hilarious.
That is hilarious. It's also something I wish I did more. I'm such a meticulous planner. It's not that players, I don't know. Do you ever see me DM and think, man, we really threw Randy for a loop? You might.
It's rare.
Yeah, and so I must be able to hide. Now on the inside, I'm telling you, there's lots of times I'm like, oh man, what the hell are they doing? And I'm not ready for this. But you know what? What I've learned over the years, I have this, and it's not a brag. I've been DMing, been playing for 40 years, mostly DM. I can wing a lot of crap in a fantasy game. And if you guys go off the rails, I really shouldn't worry about it. I probably shouldn't prep, probably not even half as much as I do, but it's kind of just bad habits.
Right.
Not bad, but just my own habits.
Yeah. It's an interesting situation he brings up. It kind of plays into what we're going to talk about later on.
Yep.
With player and character knowledge, because I guarantee you there are people that we've played with that would say, I would have been able to tell if that was fake. I would have known if that was a fire extinguisher.
Right.
Blah, 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 blah. And you're like, well, you didn't say anything until now when you shot it in the heat of battle. So, tough luck.
Yeah.
I would have known.
Yep.
Wouldn't my character have checked that?
Yeah. I kind of hate that. I don't know, dude. You didn't. Part of me thinks, well, we'll talk about it tonight. I guess that's a good.
Yeah. Hold on a second. I'm going to write something down.
Uh-oh. Joe is writing.
It's not going to be a book.
There's a lot of dead air here. I'll fill it in though. While Joe writes, I'll just say that I do think that Cabin Con is so close. I can't stand it. I'm pumped.
All right. Done writing.
All right, cool. More Jason.
As far as balance versus randomness, I don't think games can really be balanced. Just like, not everybody's born equal. You might have some equal rights or some God-given rights, but realistically, we're not all born equal, and not all characters can be equal. It's just, life. Suck it up, folks. But I like randomness, and maybe that's because I'm a little bit lazy. I'd much rather roll up a character than do a point-buy character, because when I roll up a character, then I can look at it and say, okay, I'm going to play it this way, and I'll pick a movie character or whatever I'm going to emulate, and just play it that way. And that's what I like to do, because it's simple, and then I get to enjoy the game. Where a point buy, I fret over, do I put a point here, a point into this, and what's optimization, and I'm pulling my hair out and doing 20 different builds, and screw all that. I'd rather just roll 3d6 down the line and play.
He might want to rethink that a little bit.
Why?
Well, based on the last how well he rolled his character that I heard him talk about.
That Supers game? Was that the one?
Where he had like his total modifiers added up were like -3 or something like that. Might want to think about that a little bit more.
I'm with Jason. I don't want to spend time when I'm playing. I'd rather just faster the better, dude. Let's get to the coolness. And it's not about making my character. It's about playing. That's me.
Gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, we are not all equal. Some are taller, some are shorter, some are faster, some are slower.
Yep. Some are prettier like me. That's just the way it is.
Yes, that's the way it is.
So as for Randy's pet peeve here, the silly characters in a serious campaign, I think that's where maybe not session 0, but at least a talk between the GM and the players is important when you're making characters. If you're not going to do character creation together, at least have some kind of understanding. if I know that you want to do a serious character and you want me to follow a certain naming convention, I'm 100% going to follow that. I'm not going to try to derail your game. That'd be a dick move. But if that's not the case, if it's a loose game and we're just sitting down having fun, then yeah, I might make a character called something silly, right? Like in the in the Mithras classic fantasy game where I'm playing a monk that's, you know, kind of super naive, kind of like Will Ferrell's character in Elf. I've named my character Anagram. I think that's the right term.
Yeah, I don't, you know, it's just, it depends on the game for me. I mean, I think Jason's right. If I lay it out, and I generally don't. The most I'll do is I'll show you guys like, oh, this is how I'm doing it. And even in that game, a lot of folks didn't always follow that exact the naming conventions. That's okay. It's not meant to be a straitjacket. I just kind of want you to have names that could fit within the world. But having said that, it's not like I wouldn't let you play, you know, Goober the Fighter if you wanted to, but people might be like in the game, you know, NPCs would be like, that's a really strange name you have, sir.
And that would be the nice response.
Yeah, the nice response. Yeah.
I've taken that you know, the name from Elf and done an anagram of that character's name for my character in that classic fantasy Mithras game. But again, if you know, nobody has an issue with it, and we even put up 3 different character concepts each, and the majority of people that voted, yeah, play this naive elf that plays like Will Ferrell, and, you know, play my naive monk that plays like Will Ferrell and Elf. So that's you know, everybody's on board with it, so I don't see why it's an issue. And I'm not going to play it stupid like Will Ferrell and Elf, but he is going to be like, oh, you know, that's a nice doggy, and try to pet the wolf, and he's going to take people at face value and expect everybody to be good and, you know, be easily taken in when somebody tries to, you know, trick him, that kind of thing. But it'll be interesting. I look forward to playing that game, actually.
It doesn't sound bad. I could live with that.
Yeah, I'm interested when he said that they voted on it. They voted on it.
Yeah. So I don't know. I feel like I've heard of this before, this style of getting player consensus on even your character, but I don't know. I wish maybe Jason could elaborate on that next time. That's interesting. My first gut is like, I don't know if I want them voting on what I can play. But maybe he's not saying that. I don't know.
As for Eric's show, yeah, I called in Eric. We'll see if he plays my messages. I pretty much agree with you guys 100%. My thought on Eric's podcast, though, was that the horses are out of the stable and it's too late to rein in those terms. They've just all been used so interchangeably for so long and by so many games. I just don't think you can rein them in now. But I totally agree with where you guys are coming from on that. You guys are pretty smart, but I'm still waiting on my check.
So is he talking about when we talked about referee and game master?
It might be. I can't remember.
I didn't quite catch that, Jason. So I know with Eric, that was the last thing I'd listened with Eric Tinker. He's talking about Tinker, I believe. And yeah, I mean, if that's what he's talking about, I agree. We can't you can't use judge, you can't use ref. You can use whatever you want. It's just, I think those names have connotations to me.
Yeah, because words matter. Well,
Yes.
to a lot of people these days, they do matter.
To people with sense.
Yeah.
As far as your ranting or the news or political stuff or whatever, it doesn't matter to me where it is in your podcast. I'm going to listen regardless. I've started trying to put more controversial stuff, like I put spoilers for movies, or when I did that ill-conceived rant about, it wasn't really a rant, but ill-conceived thing on the British monarchy. I put that after the end credits of my show. But honestly, people are going to listen to you or not. And if people are going to not listen to you because of something, I don't think it matters where it is in your show. So I know that's not very helpful, but that's kind of the honest truth. So I think you put it wherever it fits best in your show. Unless it's spoilers for movies, then you put it after your credits, doggone it. Okay, enough of that. Take care, guys. Really enjoyed the show, and looking forward to your next one.
Jason doesn't like me spoiling movies now. He got no use for that. He's a totally social gamer, and he wants to get along with people. But as soon as Randy starts spoiling Descent, it's over. No, the man, he likes his movies. I mean, so I respect that.
Yeah.
But actually, when I think about it, I don't know, Joe. We have to talk about it. We're gonna put our segment, the negative material, playing at the end of this podcast, but we may have to bring it back in. I'm kind of getting worked up, is what it is. I'm kind of worked up about it. So
right. And as far as the monarchy goes, we kicked the Brits out. I don't know why anybody pays attention to the monarchy. We don't like that here.
No kings for us.
Except now we've had a federal monarchy, or not monarchy, but a federal kind of, I don't know what the term
President's
is.
Almost a king.
Almost been like that for decades.
So the Brits are laughing their butts off at us.
Probably.
You booted us, and now look at you guys.
The president of the United States has more power than any king has ever had in the history of kings and on this planet.
Fact, and that's not right.
All right, so that's it from Jason, but
I think he should try. I think he should try to do more. That's just, I'm disappointed. Yeah. That was not nearly enough.
Not enough. More.
Love that dude.
And if he calls in with enough messages, we can just let his messages play, and then we'll have a podcast without even having to talk.
Dude, I think we need to invite Jason to CabinCon.
Probably.
I think he'd love it.
I'm sure he would.
It's only a month away, brother. Who's up next?
Well, John Allen Large sent us a raft of messages very early this morning.
Cool.
Of course, he's on British time.
Oh, that monarchy loving dude.
Yeah.
Love you, John.
Don't love your monarchs, though.
We got enough of our own around here. We don't need you.
Yeah. Too many people like that. All right, so let's let John kick it off.
Hey there, guys. It's John here from the Red Dice Diaries. Just listening to one of your latest episodes where you responded to some of my call-ins. I'm glad it went through and you actually got some sound with this. Makes it a bit easier to answer, doesn't it? But yeah, as for F-bombs, I normally sort of bleep them out on my own podcast, but I sort of got the feeling you guys wouldn't really be too bothered by it, because to be honest, I do swear an awful lot normally. But yeah, as for the whole PC Macintosh thing, PCs all the way, son. Although those Windows updates are a pain in the backside, and I never understand why every single update seems to mess up my audio sort of settings, even when the update has nothing to do with audio. And as for the overtime at work, I've just been promoted at work a few weeks ago, so I've got a hell of a lot of extra work without having to ask for overtime. Anyway, I'm going to get back to listening to the episode, guys. Take it easy.
Is that a quotation promotion? Congratulations, John. You get to do this now. But hopefully, congratulations. It's really cool. But yeah, but I don't ever worry about updates for my Mac, just so you and John know that.
Yeah, but you also don't buy your own PC.
That's right, baby.
Yeah.
Because if I was, I'd probably be a PC guy again. I used to be one, actually.
Yeah.
So,
right.
Yeah.
Macs are great as long as you don't have to pay for them.
I'm just talking out my butt. So.
Right. My laptop is still a brick at the moment. So I've got a long weekend coming up, and I'm going to try to fix it at that point.
Cool. All right, more from John. Aren't you down one lower?
Also, hey there, guys. It's John here from the Red Dice Diaries. You're asking in one of your recent episodes about BX pre-gen characters. Now, if you do want some BX pre-gen characters, you can certainly gen a first level character by searching for the total party kill generator, and literally it would just bring up a website with a first level BX character on it. You can hit F5 or refresh and it will create a new one randomly. And in fact, I'm going to make the title of this message the link to that, so you should be able to find that. Don't know if that's any good, but there you go. Take it easy.
Yeah. Thanks, John.
Thank you. Very helpful.
Yep.
Also, Old School Essentials, which is pretty much a straight port of BX, has on their sort of random generator site a random NPC generator where you can select the class and level, and it sort of gives you the randomly generated NPC of that level and class, and you can copy that information to your clipboard, stick it in a character sheet, whatever you want. So you could probably use that to make some pre-gens. Again, I'll put the link as the title of this message. You might find it some use. Anyway, take it easy, guys. I'll catch you soon.
That's actually a game I've thought about getting is Old School Essentials. But
Yeah, me too.
I don't know. It doesn't sound bad at all.
You know, he put the title in the description of this message. I'll have to check some other places, but it gets cut off.
Oh, boo.
Yeah, and it's not like you can't highlight the text, which yeah.
Okay.
Unfortunately,
well,
I'll see if I can figure it.
We'll figure it out. Necrotic
I
Gnome,
think
I know where it's at.
Yeah, we know it has most of the link here. You can probably figure out the rest.
Yeah. Thanks, John.
Very much.
Hey there, guys. I've just started listening to episode 34. It's John O from the Red Dice Diaries, and I think the instrument you're referring to is called a sitar. I think it's spelled S-I-T-A-R. That's a sort of 60s like guitar sort of vibe that you were talking about, I think. Anyway, I'm going to get back to the rest of the episode. Take it easy, guys.
Sitar.
Yep.
All right there, guys. It's John here from the Red Dice Diaries, just listening to your Game and Gamer Mindsets episode where Jason's calling in to talk about his sort of gaming schedule. So I thought I'd drop mine as well. I basically play in a weekly game on Thursday evenings, which runs for about 3 or 4 hours. And then I run 2 games, but they're on alternating Fridays, and they're for about 3 or 4 hours each. And then occasionally we have a bit of a one-shot at weekends. So most weeks it's about sort of like maybe 8, 9, 10 hours game in a week. And then if there's a one-shot, stick another few hours on that. Anyway, I'm going to get back to listening to the episode. Keep up the good work, guys. I'll catch you soon.
These guys are making me a little jealous.
They're making me very jealous. Even though I'm not a huge fan of online play, I would totally play online with those 2 guys.
Yeah.
That would be sweet. And they sound like they're getting a lot of good gaming in, and we got to make some changes. Post Cabin Con, we're about to make some changes. We're about to game like crazy people.
Game on.
Yep.
Game on.
All right, man. Is that all for the calls?
That's all the calls.
All right.
Let's see.
Got any good feelings before we leave the positive material plane you want to share? Just kind of wide open. Anything you'd like to say is positive as far as gaming? Any success stories this week? And this doesn't have to be anything massive, just something you did. Like me, I had my Deadlands box. I got my Deadlands box set from their Kickstarter in. I'm loving that. This was last weekend, but I got my OD&D white box game completely finished. I was very, very, I don't know, I had a blast. It was last Saturday just writing that up. It was so cool just because it was just seeing the simplicity of it, man. It was something else.
Well, what I did do gaming-wise was after listening to a bunch of podcasts and considering some things, and watching Shadiversity on YouTube a bit, though I disagreed with some of his takes on class and level. He thinks classes and level games are no good.
Disagree.
But I decided to do a quick write-up of some rules. I don't know. The main thing the first thing I wrote down was what I think would be a good modular magic system that you could just use in place of what's there for, I think, 3rd edition and back.
Oh, okay.
Maybe 5th, probably not 4th, and not 13th age. Might be able to do with Pathfinder.
Right.
But it's essentially spell points, though you don't get many.
Right.
And you don't get a whole lot of spells. You start out with 3. You get, and normally in a lot of these the D&D versions, you get a free spell or 2, depending on which version we're talking. Every time you level up when you're a wizard. This you only get 1 when you get new spell level. and then you only have 3. What is it? I wrote down
So 3. So you're saying you get 3 spells at first level, and you wouldn't get, if you're going to use old, standard D&D, you get 3 spells at first level, and you wouldn't get another one until 3rd when you would get the 2nd level spell slot.
free.
So you can still gather spell books and things.
Mm-hmm.
And scrolls, can you copy scrolls and turn them into spells in your mind?
Well, the way
You
I
see
wrote
that
it
happening?
up is the rest must be discovered, and then everything else as is, whatever system.
Okay.
So
Okay.
if that system allows, I don't know if every version of D&D allowed you to copy over from a found scroll. I can't remember.
I haven't written a thing down. You've been written like a madman. You're inspired by Brandon Sanderson's lectures at Brigham Young. You're doing kind of a book sort of starting, and you got this going on, which
I'm
sounds
tired
really
of
cool.
complaining about other people.
Yeah, that's
other
fair.
Games, not people,
Yeah.
really, games.
Right. Compared
I
to, and you
just
said, see if you can do better. Yeah. I
Or
don't blame it.
just do something that I like better.
Right. And I'll tell you, I'm kind of enamored of spell points for simplicity. And I tell you what I'm feeling right now is I kind of let's see how it goes at Cabin Con, but the white box has done something to inspire me. And it's not just the idea that, it's super simple. It's like, you know what? That's a framework to begin with. And I think I thought I could bolt on a movement system, quotations 3E. I could bolt on spell points. I could bolt on a few fighter maneuvers and just stick with the basic 3 or 4 classes and see if we couldn't build a working system where we literally borrowed the things we liked from all the versions of D&D. I think we could hodgepodge that dude and be pretty darn happy.
Right. And one thing that Shad said, I agreed with.
Mm-hmm.
And actually it was kind of, I watched that video about classes, and then I listened to.
I'll look that one up. Shadiversity on classes and levels.
Yeah. Well, it's 2 different videos.
Okay.
But one's on level systems and one's on classes.
Okay.
Him and Grognard both. Grognard talked about classes as well.
We're talking about Glenn.
Glenn.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And it got me to thinking. Well, mainly was when Shad was saying in the video on classes that when the game designers keep throwing new classes and new classes and new classes,
Mm-hmm.
It kind of makes you think that the other classes didn't cover all the spots and maybe they didn't design it very well. So I think the point there is when you have your initial offering of a system,
Mm-hmm.
And D&D is generic.
Yes.
It doesn't have an implied setting within the basic rules, not supposed to, but it kind of sometimes throws in a little bit here and there. So it's kind of generic, and that's one, I think they leave it generic on purpose, and then they can leave open the door for lots of extra stuff.
Yes.
They can throw in. Instead of having, this is the implied setting. It doesn't have to imply it strictly, but the type of setting and the type of adventurers you have in it, and then the environment and stuff like that, and it's going to imply everything. And if you make it complete, then it's going to have all the classes in it, if you use classes,
Mm-hmm.
that are going to be represented within the world. And if you don't have all of the stuff that's in the game world represented in the book, then it's not complete, perhaps.
And I don't know. You know what though? I don't want this to be a debate section, but when I think about that, I would say, if you come in and say, okay, look, I've got 9 classes in my game, and that's what's in the world because that's what seems to fit my setting. It's not going to stop players from saying, look, I want to play a ninja illusionist. And I can't build him with your thief and your bard. Correct. So can't we have a new class called ninja illusionist? And players are going to want something more. Now, I have an answer for that. I'd be like, no. There'll be a response. No. You're playing a different game. That character is kind of stupid. And no, not that it's stupid, but it's stupid in this setting. I'm not interested in that.
Right.
Pick from these. This is your options, but you don't. You don't see that. Pathfinder was just the opposite of that, dude.
Right.
Gunslinger, android. What are you talking about? That was just like, that's Gonzo to the next level. I'm sorry, it is.
Right. So you got fantasy is supposed to be about.
I'm feeling negative. I'm feeling negative. We shouldn't feel negative. Go ahead. Go.
Right. This is
Do your thing.
Yeah. So fantasy is about unlimited possibilities, right? So, but unlimited possibilities that you start from as a designer, that you eventually give a framework to, and then you have to define things. It can't be anything goes.
No.
And I know I used to be a fan of anything goes.
Right. I think it can if everybody's agreed. Let's play a super kitchens, like our Elysium game was pretty
Kitchen
super
sink.
kitchen sink.
Yeah.
That's okay. But right now I'm looking for something with a theme. I'm looking for worlds that are consistent. I'm looking for a world with limits. That sounds weird, but a defined limit. So this is what this is like. There's no such, there is no such thing as ninjas in Greyhawk.
Right.
I mean, you could say that. I'm not saying that's the case. You could not in my Greyhawk. There are no ninjas. There is no Oriental land. There may not be Oriental style people. This is not what I'm envisioning.
Right. And nothing wrong with that.
No, there isn't. Do whatever you want. Yeah.
Right.
So that wasn't purely positive. But shall we zip on to our main topic?
Zip away, my friend.
All right, dude. So now this is one we have. I won't say we have. Joe brought this up as an idea. It's called managing the known versus the unknown in role-playing games. And he hit me with it, and I was like, cool. And then I was like, what do you mean? What are you talking about? And then he threw some examples my way. I was like, okay. And I thought I had it. Then I've texted you and contacted you a couple of times with this topic, and I pushed it back, and I finally got it on this episode. I think I'm ready to discuss it, and I think there's more to what I even wrote. I hope you have even more to bring up, because I think there's more to what I've written.
Well, did because you asked me for some elaboration, and then I sent you a text with several
correct
bullet points.
And you should have seen them in there. I wrote.
Yeah, they're scattered in there. Yes.
Yeah, and so what I've tried to do is I've come up with the idea is, so this known versus unknown, it can be from a player perspective or a DM perspective or a campaign perspective.
DC perspective, which is kind of the DM.
Yeah. And I think I found 5 sort of big questions. We may load it up. I'm not sure I can define this well, other than, let's start with this idea. This is the most obvious one, right? Number one, people talk about, this is kind of metagamey. People use the word metagaming, but I'm not really worried about that.
Yeah.
The idea is player knowledge versus character knowledge.
I think we have talked a little bit about this here and there.
This is going to go, I think, a different direction. Maybe
it's going to go a different direction. There might be some overlap, but right.
So the idea is, and I just threw a few things down there. So in general, Joe brought this up, which I'm going to start with the bottom one. Should players confer to their PCs their own knowledge? And to that, and again, I don't want to debate whether they're a good player or bad player. I'm not. I don't even care about that. But how do you manage that? Joe, I hope you don't mind. Joe's a pretty well-read dude. He's been in the military. He's been what were you called? A medical, not technologist. What was your MOS?
So the first one was cardiac specialist.
Right.
And but that during about the time of Desert Shield, Desert Storm, the MOS structure was restructured. The medical side, especially, actually everything except for the combat side, was restructured so that every job within the military, and some got eliminated, to have a combat mission, because they didn't at that point.
Oh, okay.
So I was a cardiac specialist in that you assist a cardiologist in a cardiologist office, and
right.
You had absolutely no field mission in that.
Right.
Respect.
Gotcha.
And then I was a medic.
Now, do you mind if I share some of your work history that I know?
Sure.
So the idea, because I want to get this to PC. So Joe's done that. He's worked he's done some Microsoft stuff. You had some training. You've worked for done some sort of computer type stuff.
I worked for UUNet.
Yeah, UUNet. He's done home health care, which is very hard. And he's a mailman. So those are some of the big highlights that he's done. Big military, computery stuff, home healthcare, and now he's a mailman. So Joe has a vast array of experience. He sits down to play a wizard in a fantasy world. How much can he bring to the table? Or should you? Or can you? What will your character, and how do I even stop him? I mean, what I mean by that is, as a DM, he can do things, ask questions in the world, like, we need to get this, we're first level, we need to get this message to the other city. And Joe might say, well, as a mailman, he says, well, mail travels this way and blah, 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 blah. He might know the history of the, and this is how it would work. And I'd be like, well, it's a fantasy world. He goes, but really, it makes sense to do this. And, should his character even be thinking like that? Right. And
So
how does he manage that?
Right.
Even if he's not trying to be like a dick about it, you're just being yourself playing a character.
Right. And knowing some history.
Yep.
Messages in the past were often delivered via birds of one kind or another.
Yep.
In the world, I can't remember which World War specifically, maybe 2, maybe 1. Pigeons were used to carry, or it may be other birds. And there are even fantasy settings. Yeah, Game of Thrones has their specific ravens.
Maesters, they send ravens. Yep.
Ravens, and then owls delivered messages in Harry Potter.
Right.
So it's not like it's unheard of. So, but you don't see it in fantasy games.
Almost never.
I mean, I've never read any setting where they talked about it. That doesn't mean that there aren't, because I maybe have read 0.5% of the setting material that's out there.
Right. I may have 1%.
I have not heard any podcaster or anybody representing the playing public or game makers or anything talk about message birds.
Yeah. And especially as it relates to medieval setting game, fantasy game, it's meant to be quasi-medieval, Middle Ages. How does modern knowledge, how do you keep even a player from saying like, well, we're going to, I majored in physics. So if we do this to this rock, put just enough force right here, here's what's going to happen. And it's going to roll down the hill and it's going to smash through the orc village. And I'm kind of like, and I'm playing a fighter with an 8 intelligence.
Right.
And I don't mean this in the meta. I just mean like, how does a person how is that handled as a player who might do that as a reflex?
Right. So I would say, well, since the player of the dumb guy brought it up, I might, if I play a couple of fighters who aren't the brightest in the room, I might say a solution and then suggest somebody else do it.
Dude, yeah. Or look at that. Or even you could give the solution out and we could just narratively say that Debbie's wizard, who's super intelligent, thought of it.
Right.
But that's a narrative approach, which, we're not super narrative guys, but I think it works pretty well.
Or I would keep my mouth shut.
I agree. I would too. But I mean, you may, they could be, people could be arguing, what should we do? What should we do? And you're like, well, you just do that. Because their arguments sometimes in the game, when other players are arguing, even if they're in character, it can pull you out of character.
Correct.
And you're just trying to solve the problem.
Which is kind of my beef with sleuthing.
Yes.
When we're sitting around the table figuring out how we are going to figure something out. Right. I'm like, let's just get it over with. Let's do it. Let's do something.
Pick something and do it.
Waiting to do something. Yeah. Anyway. Yeah. Modern knowledge and all that.
And do you think that and you brought this up, that common skills aren't necessarily common? I mean,
okay.
Because since people are so different, really, in our world. Yes. You get into a fantasy world, they're different. What we call common knowledge. You have a common knowledge skill in Savage Worlds. How common is what things are truly common?
There might be. Well, you could argue that in a medieval setting, the common man, the commoner, might be the common man might have more in common than we do in the modern day. It's possible.
Okay. We are very specialized,
right,
as a country and as a society.
But I could easily make a counter argument to that between someone who lives in a town or a city and someone who primarily lives on a farm.
True.
So
True.
someone in the city is going to have different experiences than someone who lives on the farm.
Well, you had mentioned, go ahead.
So, so saying everybody has the same, well, this thing came up in a YouTube video that I was watching about gaming, and the fellow was saying something along the lines of, my character should be able to do what a person can do.
Okay, so you can eat and walk and go to the bathroom. What
Right.
else can you do?
Right.
What else can people
But the implication is that every person is capable of the same things.
Right, which is not true.
There's overlap for sure.
For sure.
Not every person is capable of the same things, and not everybody's lived experience, to use something from the left, would put them in a position to think in the same way or pattern. So if Randy is standing in front of a yawning gorge and trying to figure out how he's going to get across, he might think of the problem differently than Joe, who stands in front of the same one.
Sure. I'm thinking I need to go get a helicopter and have somebody fly me across.
Right.
But so then within the game, this impact of character knowledge and what you know and what's unknown, I think this comes up a lot. When I'm a player, it comes up a lot. There'll always be some situation where I'll go, would I really know that? Should I even suggest that? Because it feels anachronistic. It feels like maybe it's out of sorts. But to quote one of your guys, I wish I had done this earlier, it just came to me right now. Shadiversity has a video about what did medieval people actually know. And they weren't quite as, according to him, they weren't quite as like dumb as people thought they were.
No, they weren't dummies.
I should say dumb's not the word. They weren't quite as ignorant,
right,
as people thought they were.
Well, a lot of people have the misconception that the farther back you go in history, the dumber or the more ignorant people are. And maybe in certain ways, perhaps. Of course, science, people don't know as much science or whatever. There's a breadth of knowledge that folks don't have. But when you go back to some of the earliest thinking people, someone like, who's the earliest philosopher you can think of?
Aristotle, Eratosthenes, Socrates, yeah.
He was no dummy.
No. These were great. They were great thinkers. In fact, I would argue, if you go back in time, there's better thinkers than there are today. 100%.
By and large.
My gosh. There were so many. Like, take Blaise Pascal. He was a great mathematician. I think he's the one that figured out that's Pasteur, Louis Pasteur. But he figured out his Pascal's triangle. He also did, I think he was usually if you were a learned man or a learned woman in that time, usually it was men, even the great mathematicians didn't just focus on one topic, dude. They would do biology, they would do philosophy, they would do mathematics, and they wouldn't just be okay at it. They would be ridiculous at it.
Right.
And so they were plenty smart enough. That's a big difference from saying, oh, we haven't figured the technology out, or we haven't learned yet exactly how to describe the theory of relativity, or we don't know quite yet that, what is it? E equals MC squared, right? That's for relativity, but whatever. The point is, because we didn't know facts doesn't mean they're not smart.
Right.
And sometimes I find myself as a GM and a player, like here's a simple idea that I thought for the longest time was strange. If could I borrow money? Banks back in a medieval time, banks didn't exist. People gave loans. People charged interest. In biblical times, they charged interest.
Right. So it didn't just disappear.
No, and it's not like they didn't know those things. It's pretty logical. Hey, can I borrow 5,000 gold pieces from you? Why? First of all, and second of all, if I'm a really good friend of you, okay. And if I'm not like a really good friend, I'm gonna be like, look, you can't just have this money and give it back to me tomorrow. You're using my 5,000 gold. I expect something in return.
Right.
It may be more money. It may be something else. So my point is, I think with the known versus the unknown with player and character knowledge, to me, I think sometimes we underestimate what the player characters might know.
We might underestimate that.
Or what they're able to figure out.
Right.
But also that common thread of everybody knows this, I don't. Yeah, I'm with you. I'm not sure.
I don't
I don't think I'd buy it either. What about this? This is something that's always. I think I mentioned this last week about players and knowing things. The things that characters know, and my example was battle plans. So suppose a group of characters they're planning to break into the Archmage's tower. And they've been planning this for a while, or that's been the goal of the campaign, or even this session. And they like, look, we got a plan. We're going to do this. And I told you as a GM, I'd kind of like to know it. Is it better for me not to know and them to know what they're doing until it actually comes to the table? And we're saying, what are you doing? What's the first thing you're doing? I'll cast a spell. Okay. And in real time, you're not telling me what you're planning. Don't tell me all the steps you're going to do. Just say, we have a plan. And with the game, this is kind of a different twist on this known versus unknown. Would it be better? And I've thought about this. Sometimes I think it would be, even though I want to know all the things you're doing. And maybe it's better the GM doesn't know and it reacts more organically. But there's also the flip side. The GM is one person and the players are 4, 5, 6. It's pretty much not fair. I mean, there's a reason we say the DM can kill the players anytime they want to or do whatever they want to. If the DM doesn't have some extra power behind his strategy, meaning beyond strategy, just the ability to know things, how can I make it some fights that are supposed to be challenging, even challenging? Because honestly, I don't see how. I really don't. Tactically, I rarely feel like I'm doing even close to what you guys do when you're at the table. I feel like I'm just barely treading water most of the time.
Right. Well, it is 3, 4, 5 to 1, tactically speaking.
Yeah,
right.
3, 4, 5 brains to 1.
Yeah.
So, but my thought is that known versus unknown. Well, I guess I'm getting into the next part, the DM, but connect to the players. Should the players try to keep battle plans or, sneak plans to themselves until they hit the actual screen to hit the actual table to actually simulate what would really be the case? I don't know.
It will depend on the DM, obviously, because if they like surprises and they feel like it's a challenge, or they just enjoy the surprise in and of itself, they would probably be okay with that. Some other DMs who maybe have issues with control.
Who would that be? I can't imagine. It's really weird to me.
may enjoy that less.
Well, there's also the idea. Well, last week we mentioned the question about, and Jason commented on it, going in through the tunnels to get into the back door of the villain's lair. Even if Randy doesn't think of all the things you would do, Randy is not a super genius,
right?
Like the 3,000-year-old elven lich with a 27 intelligence. You're not sneaking into his keep,
right?
You're just not.
It might be a good idea. I don't know if there's such a thing out there, but maybe we can corner the market on it. Things the smart villains would do.
Ooh,
list.
There you go. I'm writing that down.
Smart villain tactics. What are they? What should they be? Dumb villain tactics.
Yep. But that's kind of the
suggestions that you could have, and then maybe you just so that the players spring upon you a dastardly plan of overcoming your ultra smart, ultra prepared, been alive for millennia villain.
Right.
And first contact with the players, it seems like they're going to wipe them out, which doesn't make sense. So you can pull out your smart villain tactics card and say, I'm going to use one of these.
Right. And this will counter their cool plan.
Maybe.
So yeah, maybe. And maybe it's so unique we didn't think of it. But it's hard. That's a tough call because I see both sides of that question. And I love the idea of being surprised, except I don't think the game always plays well when I am fully surprised.
You could always design a check
or
a resource to be used. So let's say the bad guy, you as a DM haven't thought of a thing, yet you have your ultra smart bad guy who's getting ready to face down the PCs. either you spend a resource and figure out how that works, which is a mechanic, which maybe not great,
Right.
but or you have a check. A resource you could use. You would want to have something that not have a brand new thing to track.
No.
Right. So
Right.
maybe if you do the thing off the list, the bad guy doesn't get the use of one of their abilities.
Kind of an abstraction of what that costs him.
Right. A trade-off.
So you brought this up during the positive material plane segment. What if players coming into, you guys are sneaking into the wizard's tower, and the rogue goes up to the door. It's going to lead into his secret chamber. You're trying to break into his tower to steal the magic tome of ineffable power. And he goes up to the door and he goes, all right, I'm going to check for traps. So I move right up to the door handle. Oh, boom. Say versus trap goes off on the rug.
Yes.
I said I was checking for traps. I would do that. I would check that. You didn't say there was a rug there. I'm like, okay. But my PC would know to check that. What do you think of that?
That's cheap.
I think it's cheap.
That's cheap.
What if I didn't mention the rug? I feel like that's an insignificant detail.
It is. There was the rug being there changes everything.
I would have changed, which maybe they're right. Maybe it would. Well, let's suppose I described it. They check the rug, they check the door, and they go in and they go, and I say, you see the book on the pedestal, it's glowing. All right, I check before me for traps. I check the floor and I move forward. Oh, you didn't check the choker that's above the door. It's a creature reaches down and snatches you and starts choking you to death. You didn't check for that. Well, I would look over. I mean, I checked the door. I should know that. I mean, that's a little. I think players sometimes want to say the things that what they say they would know or be able to do. They really stretch that a little bit.
I say the only way you can get away with that is if the game has a resource you can spend.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's not a bad idea.
Or
some sort of resource.
Stuff we've done in the past is make a deal. So maybe there's not a specific resource in the game you're playing.
Right.
Maybe I do the same thing. I'm going to lose a spell slot.
Right.
To say that I did check that, or some such thing. You might be able to work out a deal like that, and then just narrate it so that it works out.
Yeah,
now,
and
here's a monkey wrench though. So go ahead.
I'll
go in the monkey wrench after what you're going to do.
I'm good. Go ahead.
So monkey wrench is this. The player, and this is something I've said in the past. The player is not the character.
Yep.
Living in the fictional world that it's in.
Right.
So the player doesn't have all the inputs to their senses or their knowledge that the character does, or would if it was a real person living in that situation.
Yep.
So you could say, yeah, all this stuff you guys are saying are all nice and well, but the player is at a severe disadvantage from that point of view. So you could say that allowing them to do all these things might compensate.
Yeah. And also, if I'm going to be that particular, and this is another issue, but it's connected, if I want the player to expressly tell me what he's looking for, because so I can tell him what he knows, he's got to be, check the, not the lintel. What's it called on the door? Not the mantle. What's the word for the top of the door where the cloaker would be? Anyway, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
If I want to, I check 5 steps in front of me. I check I look around the left. I look to the right. I look along the seam where the door frame's in there. I check above that for that. If I don't want to slow the game to a crawl, we could just say, but if I do that, players will start, let's do Operation Delta. This is how we approach doors, Randy. This is our door operating procedure.
Yeah.
We used to call it in first edition, fart the door.
Fart the door.
Find and remove. It was find and remove traps, but it was really, this is search pattern alpha. And that's how we always do every door, every time we enter a door, which is ludicrous.
Right. So I think that once a group of players gets to know each other, like our group does, we have kind of a way of doing things, and we
Yes.
don't get on each other's case.
Nope.
Really.
Mm-mm.
I mean, there's been some arguments in the past, but
Yep.
we've got to the point now where we don't get on each other's case about a lot of these niggling details.
Right.
A lot of this is more advice for people when you're getting your group together and you're trying to figure things out.
Right.
So if if I'm playing a thief and I'm responsible for discovering the traps, which is
Your thiefly duties.
do my thiefly duties. If I forget to look under a rock or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
I forget,
Mm-hmm.
and we just roll with it.
Yep. Because I think at our age now, I think honestly, and you'd probably agree with me, it's more fun if that choker, that creature, that small, you know what I'm talking about. It's a 3E creature. It's a skinny little dude's got long arms. It's more fun if he's trying to choke your thief out than for you guys to just see it every time and go through the door and get the book and leave.
Right.
I mean, it's more fun, it's more exciting.
Mhm.
It's not that you got to let things happen, but if the DM pulls a little bit of a gotcha, as long as it's like, it's not, okay, I got you, Joe, you're choked out, you're dead. But it's like you're being attacked by a choker. Well, you guys are going to kill it, but it's like, oh crap, I'm in a little bit of danger, but it makes the story cool. And back to the rule of cool. And I think that's something that can't be, you can have all the session zeros you want, but if you got 5 or 6 new players, that's going to have to be worked out and play.
Yeah.
Those things, every situation is not going to be thought of. And I've given in when a player said, wouldn't I have known this?
Mhm.
Give it into you when you've said that to me before.
Mhm.
I'm like, yeah, you're right. You probably would have. I mean, and most of the time I'm not trying to do gotchas, but there's times I'll set up something devious and I'll be like, oh yeah, this will be cool. But my thought is like, oh, I'm going to murder the whole party. This is going to make the scene tough on them,
Right.
and they're going to really have to work hard to get over it. And so,
and you can think of all kinds of situations in media where people don't miss things.
Yeah.
Get in
Experience.
the car. Someone gets in a car, and somehow they've missed the bad guy in the back seat.
yes,
That can't happen
it
unless
sounds
you're
really
super distracted
right.
and it's dark and you're not looking at anything except narrow, tunnel vision.
But if you get in your car in your garage, 364 days a year, and nothing happens, but on one of those days there's somebody back there, that probability might be higher than you think.
Yeah, I guess.
Because it doesn't have to be tunnel vision. It could just be like standard. This is how I roll. I open the door.
You're in routine.
In a routine. You're just not thinking about it. It's 6:00 in the morning. You're heading to work. But having said that, and that brings up an interesting topic too. Maybe we shouldn't go down this road, but I'll mention it. In D&D in particular, you always have a 5% chance of failing if you stand with the roll D20 and a 1's a miss.
Mm-hmm.
We got some people in our advanced group, in our more broad group, that think that's way too high for a 20th level character to have a 5% chance of failing.
Well, it really depends on the situation and what we're talking about.
Well,
failing anything
in the game, if you try to hit a kobold, you're 20th level. If you roll a 1, you miss. I don't care if you're 20th level butch with a +5 Vorpal and belt of storm giant strength and boots of speed. You see a kobold in front of you, go up to whack him, you roll a 1, you miss. And this is just a 2 hit point baby kobold who's mad and tries to throw. And if he rolls a 20, he gets through your 37 armor class and does a 2 damage. But I mean, the damage is not the key. It's some of our group players see this, and I think I don't know how I feel about this.
How do you know that?
Yeah, how do you know that you wouldn't have a 5% chance of missing? And they'll make arguments like, well, people that are people that are really good at shooting guns, professional people that are professional firearms, they win trophies and stuff. They don't miss 5% of the time.
A target that doesn't fight back.
Okay, fair enough.
So if we're talking apples to apples, firearms cannot be a firearm cannot be compared to a sword.
Okay, how about this? How about I'm a master? Let's say you're a master locksmith, not a thief. You know all about locks. You've been doing it for 40 years. And you come up against a regular lock you've seen before, and you roll a 1.
Correct.
I guess it could happen.
It can happen, but skill checks don't automatically fail on a 1.
Well, not
depending on the system, depending on which
right,
version.
right. I think we're getting off. I may be getting off, but it feels like it's connected, but I'm not sure I can pull the pieces together on this, on the known versus the unknown. Well, how do we know? How do we know whether or not that would be true failure? I mean, but that's a different. That's a particular game.
Of this is supposed to be about knowing the rules, right?
Yes, right.
So, and how that, knowing the rules and how the rules affect your character, and how that plays out.
Sure.
Sometimes we know. Sometimes we think we know something, or we try to simulate what we think is reality within a game system, which I think is kind of a mistake.
Well, it'll lead down a dangerous rabbit hole.
This is slippery slope. How can you really, should have less than 5% chance of missing. Sometimes missing isn't exactly missing. Sometimes missing is a glancing blow that doesn't do any damage.
Right.
Doesn't mean you didn't connect. It just means it was an ineffective attack.
Right.
And that could be because everything's kind of abstracted. It doesn't necessarily mean you don't have the skill to hit. Perhaps you stepped in a puddle. Perhaps a bird flew in front of you at the last minute. Who knows? There's all kinds of environmental factors that.
Or perhaps when you pulled the sword out, your hand slipped a little.
Right. Maybe your hand's a little sweaty. Yeah.
And maybe the whole routine of pulling the sword out, doing your super 20th level fighter swing, the rhythm gets thrown off. I mean, a professional golfer, the reason they're so good is they do the same thing over and over. When I say same thing, all the movements are choreographed.
Very precise.
Very precise. And if you just if I went up to I want to say Tiger Woods, but he's in the hospital, I think. One of the new Jordan Smythe, I think, is a golfer. I don't know. And while he's getting ready to swing, and I just poke him. He's going to throw it off, poke him in the ribs. He's like, hey, dude, even if he swings, it's not going to be any good.
Right.
So, yeah.
About the closest you could come to situation that's kind of like combat, where you have to hit a target under stressful conditions, is I think the event in the Olympics is, I think it's cross-country skiing.
Where they use the rifle.
Right. So they do a bunch of skiing, and
there's a name for it. Yeah.
I don't know what it's called, but in that you have to after you've done a very physical workout, you have to get into a shooting zone, kind of in zen place, so that you can slow your breathing, so you're not interfering with your rifle enough so that you can make the shot.
Do they only have so much time to complete that action?
I'm not sure of all the details.
It would make sense that they did. It would be a challenge.
Right.
Yeah, that's interesting. So, so with the players, was there anything else you want to talk about with player known and versus unknown stuff? Any other comments? Because I want to move into the DM here. If you're ready. Yeah,
I guess.
I have some other things with players later on, but I mean specifically player knowledge and what they would know. Okay, what about this? So how does a DM keep what he knows from influencing? And one of the first things you mentioned, and I like it, behaviors of ignorant NPCs. So would you want to expand upon that?
Right. So I think there's a couple of different pieces to that. One is NPCs that don't know something, and they know they don't know something, and how they are going to act when the players ask them a question, or the NPC may not know everything, or even if it's a bad guy, and they don't know the NPCs. They might know like rumors. They might know secondhand knowledge about the PCs, but they don't know the PC's plans unless they've done things. So, but let's say that they're ignorant, and maybe just a bad guy. They meet him just per chance.
Yeah. So Zarek the gang leader comes rolling down the street and just runs into your PCs.
Right.
He doesn't know them from Adam.
Right. Yeah, but he's the bad guy, and the PCs are after him. Neither of them may know each other on site.
They were just hired by the sheriff to find him.
Right. So how do you make the NPC react? The other thing is, that's not really precisely, I think, what I was talking about when I was saying ignorant NPCs. But
what about this?
Mostly
go ahead.
Unreliable. How reliable? Just because an NPC says a thing doesn't necessarily mean it's correct.
Right. So you roll into the tavern, you talk to Olag, you say, "Hey, I heard Ichabod's ruined moat house is haunted." "Oh yeah, it is. A lot of people, yeah, for sure. There's ghosts and goblins all over that place." And how can you be sure? Are you saying how does the DM determine if he's really lying or if he just doesn't know and thinks it's going on rumor?
So
yeah.
So the DM might always make their NPCs reliable.
Correct.
Which is probably a mistake.
Right.
It's more interesting. I think the most interesting one is the NPC who's giving information that they think is correct and it's not.
Yeah, and I think it's fun, and I should do this more. Have NPCs, they're not trying to lie to you.
Right.
They're telling you what they think is true. They're just wrong.
They're just wrong.
And I've seen many groups, many players. Boy, if I have a PC do that, I have to do a lot of like quick talking as the NPC because you guys come back. Were you trying to set us up? You said that place was safe. We got jumped by 4 ogres.
Right.
You jerk bag. Are you trying to get us killed? No. That's what I thought. I didn't think anything was in that cave. I swear. Yeah, I think you're right. It's more fun if you spread that around. You can have reliable NPCs. You can have liar NPCs.
Right.
And liars could even be. They don't have to lie with the intent of killing the players. They may lie with the intent because they may think it sounds cool.
Right. There's a lot of there are lots of motivations that make people lie.
Yeah.
They could be being threatened. And they might be lying because they've been told to or else.
Or the players may be mad at him and say, "Hey, you jerked us around last time. Tell us the truth." And he'll tell them what they want to hear.
Right.
Whatever you want to hear just to get you away from me.
I think bad guy ignorance, what I was really intending is what you have in the next opponent battle tactics. If the person you're facing doesn't know anything about you, their tactical options are going to be limited because they don't know what you're going to do or what you're capable of.
Well, suppose you know,
as a DM do.
Right.
So, and making anticipations for your bad guys.
Yes.
You could just be unintentionally screwing the players over.
Right. So
I know you can do that, so I'm going to do this instead.
Right. Or the players are. So let's go back to that situation with that, that ruffian, the gang leader, Zarek. He's not walking down the street. He's in the seedy tavern that the city guard doesn't go down. It's a dangerous part of town. You're hired by the sheriff to bring this guy in. And you go down there. He doesn't know you guys at all. And you roll in and you see him. Just because he notices you noticing him, is he automatically going to be like, "Dude, these guys are from the sheriff and they're after me"? You should really have a pretty big advantage unless you play your hand too soon. Now, if he's more than just a gang leader, if he's like the thief guild master and he's got ears in City Hall, he's got ears down at the City Watch, he knows the sheriff's after him. He's already heard they're sending some dudes after you. Right. Before you even get down there, that's reasonable. That's a very intelligent, a guy with his fingers in many pies.
Right.
But if you're just some gang leader, I think you have to have him react. I mean, to be honest, it might be a situation where if the players get to the right spot, make the right choices, ask the right questions, they may catch the villain with his pants down. It may be an easy fight. You might kick his teeth in and take him right to jail.
Yeah, and then I think to be more precise, let's say one of the characters has a ring of protection from fire, and the bad guy has fire spells.
Gotcha.
The player is resistant to fire. You're like, I'm going to cast fireball. No, he's resistant to fire, so I'm going to do this other thing.
Yeah.
That's kind of a jerk move on your part.
I think so.
Maybe.
And maybe it could be that, well, I feel like you'd have to think, well, if I would just think, well,
You'd have to.
Was it what would Jesus do, but what would Joe do? Because as a wizard, I mean, if Joe's faced with a lot of foes, you're going to fireball him.
You're going to fireball him.
You're going to want to soften him up.
Yeah.
And then you see, he casts fireball, and Mr. Cleric guy, who I expected to annihilate's like, that didn't even singe me. You'd be like, you might real quickly go, oh crap, I got a lot of fire spells. That dude's immune to fire. My two guards, or my two buddies. You get him, I'll take care of the rest of them.
Right.
Because that would be a reasonable response. Now, I think you're right. I think and it's very easy as a dungeon master. And we're talking about what DMs should do to combat this unknown. And this is almost like, this is metagaming or DM knowledge about the players. You got to be careful because it's real easy, even if you don't mean to. You're like, even without even thinking about it, I might go, yeah, Joe's cleric's immune to fire. Oh, look, I got grease. I'm going to cast that instead. I'm going to trip him because his dexterity I know is 9. Why am I doing that? Why does the villain, why is he that tactically? He doesn't know that about you. It's not that I should roll random for spells. I always liked in modules when they would suggest especially for spellcasters, but even combatants, this is what I've seen some really cool modules where they go, round 1, they do this, round 2, they do this, round 3, they do that. So his tactics are preset. And of course, the good module writers will say, but if the PCs do something that show option 3 is not good, he's smart enough to recognize that. Or Brutus is such a dumb butt, he's power attacking every round and does not care.
Right.
So, I think it's good as a DM. You need to have that in mind. You got to know how your PC villains, whether they're the big ones or the lieutenants or the regular dudes, how they fight. And it helps me to think about that. I don't always do that. I always feel better when I do, because I feel like, then I feel like if the players think of something outside the box, I'm like, well, they just thought of a good strategy. They're going to beat this dude. They got it figured out. That's a good move because he's not going to know that. And he's going to do this and walk right into their trap.
Right. And I don't know how, this may not even be a real issue because most DMs might already do the things we're talking about. Have set tactics that don't take into consideration the player's abilities, but it's possible that not even the character's abilities, you might as a DM know how the party or the group of players
generally rolls,
and then you fashion, maybe just unconsciously, an encounter that maybe not completely counteracts it, but deals with it.
Well, I can tell you this much as a DM, and I have done this, and I think it's appropriate. And I'm going to keep using my partner here as an example. Joel rolls in. He's always got stone skin on D&D, which means he can take 5 or 6 hits and it ain't going to hurt him. And he got fly cast, and he's invisible every time they roll into a big fight, every single time. And he's sick, he's 8th, 9th level, whatever. And, eventually you're going to run into a dragon. And I'm like, I'm going to put the dragon here because you know what? The only thing that's going to work for Joe is that stone skin. And if that dragon gets on him, he's going to tear those out real quick. So, because the dragon can see invisible, he can fly too. I might choose a monster where your standard strategy is going to make you rethink it. And I think that's good design. Mm-hmm. But if I'm doing it all the time, or if I'm subconsciously always nerfing your sweet stone skin fly invisibility move, because since the first time you did it, you kicked the living crap out of my evil necromancer, I'm like, I ain't letting him rolling over my characters like that. The hill giant chieftain ain't ready for that.
Right.
Heck,
there's a good reason that Joe has thought of that tactic.
Yes.
Because Randy is fond of having an invisible flying ogre mage fly behind the party and chop off the wizard's head.
I am pretty fond of that. Yes, that's a pretty sweet move. But yeah, I think as a DM, we're talking very meta tonight, but I mean, I don't mean like metagame bad, just we're thinking outside of the game in a really interesting way. I like this idea. I don't know how well we're tackling it, but it's intriguing. As a DM, I think I'm always when this comes up, it always makes me pause and think, dude, are you doing stuff just to make their life miserable? And part of me likes it because this is one of the reasons I like 13th Age. I don't have to think that hard about your powers. The monsters are such that monsters have cool abilities that you mostly, I mean, you can deal with, but you can't like, I'm going to put up this and I'll be immune to fire. No, you're not. No one's immune to fire, not even red dragons, technically by the rules. So it means that I just pick, you know, and when I'm running that game, I pick challenges that I think will be interesting in terms of because
it's a cool monster.
It's a cool monster, and it's
cool
about
situation.
It's about right for their level. Let's throw it in and see what happens.
Right.
You know, and sometimes you kick the poop out of it. Sometimes I'm like, whoa, that was legit tough.
Right.
Yeah, and sometimes I know I'm like, oh, this is going to be hard. But yeah, I think that's a good question. I don't know.
I don't know how big, if it's a problem at all. It was just something that came to it just occurred to me.
Yeah.
And I just started thinking about it.
Yeah. So let's move into this idea of, you know, the campaign setting. So how much of the campaign setting, how much of the campaign setting should you share with the players? That is, and you mentioned mechanics too, we'll get that in a second. So my first question was, how do you share it? Right. I mean, if you let Randy do his thing, he'll write you a gazetteer for his new campaign setting.
Correct.
And you can read 75 pages if you want to. I've done it.
Yes. And I'll want to correct all your typos.
Correct. And you probably won't want to read it. You'll be like, I'm bored. So, but I think it's better. The way to share information is to tell them at the table. Now, you guys know that it's in this setting, in this kingdom, it's very bad manners to ever refuse a maiden anything. The society gets really angry if a young maiden requests help and you don't at least consider her question.
Right.
You know? And I said, and I might say that after a maiden has asked you guys to help them. I said, before you answer, you know this. So I think you share it piecemeal. Now, if a player wants to know something, they can answer it. Or if you want to abdicate, let the player create part of the world, that's okay too. But you got to give them some stuff that would be a very much accepted common, well, here we back to that common, what most people would know. But I mean,
culture is something, local culture is something people would know.
Yes. So, and I think you can share that at the table. You don't have to give them 5 pages of gazetteer stuff. Though some players would like to read it. I've had players that like to read it.
Yeah, you could do bullet points.
Yep. Highlights.
Yeah. And I think, so one of the things another thing, the whole player knowledge, campaign knowledge, we in the current age have access to a vast information. Just
the interwebs.
30, 40 years ago,
right?
We did not.
Right.
So the landscape changed greatly over those decades.
Right.
As far as that goes. That being said, we still had a lot of knowledge. We could go to a library and see a picture of the entire world.
Yes.
Look at maps of all types of places.
Yeah.
Very at our fingertips. All we had to do is go to the library.
And go to the library and say, hey, I want to get books on African explorers.
Right.
I want to know about the Congo in 1940. I could find that.
Yeah. Yeah. It would just take a bit more effort than we have to do now. Mm-hmm. But in a medieval setting, you have to rely on word of mouth. There are some books that would float around, but
average people wouldn't be reading a lot of them. Or own it, they couldn't own them. Even if they could read, they couldn't own them. They're expensive.
Outside your village, your town, your political organization, if you lived in a kingdom, you would know some of that. But the farther distance from your hometown,
yes,
unless you're a well-traveled individual, you know little more. You know less the farther out it goes.
You're from Hamlet, and 800 miles away is the free city of Greyhawk. You don't know much about how the hoity-toity and the wealthy interact. Even in your town, the mayor's the big dude, and he ain't hoity-toity.
Right.
You know, You wouldn't know all that stuff.
Not necessarily. Now,
Right.
depending on how much travel and commerce
Mhm.
there are, you could have a picture of life outside the confines of your world that
Mhm.
you are in contact with.
But how much that can be, go back to the previous thing, how much
How
can be
much of it
relied
is
on?
accurate?
Yeah.
Correct.
Mhm.
And how much of it's rumor, how much of it's storytelling, all of that.
Yeah.
So a lot of that, I was just even thinking about, so I played wizards a lot.
Mhm.
So as an apprentice wizard,
Mhm.
what knowledge does the master impart, the mentor, the master, whatever,
Mhm.
impart to the student about the wider world, about other wizards, rival factions, all of that stuff.
When you graduate, my son, you must protect your spell book with your life.
Right.
Other wizards that catch you on the road, if they can tell you're a neophyte, they may kill you and take it. In fact, I can guarantee you out of every 4 would probably do that. So he might give you warnings like that.
Sure.
Because wizards are jealously guard their secrets, and they're always, I mean, that'd be an interesting world where wizards were like super, not just power hungry, but knowledge was like, they just craved it, you know? And so, yeah, that kind of stuff you might want to parlay, but it doesn't mean you couldn't. The first wizard you meet could be a kindly old wizard that wants to help you.
Right. So I was reading a novel. In it, there was a wizard
Mhm.
who hid that he was a wizard,
Mhm.
but he was kind of a wise man still, and and they looked at him as kind of an inventor. He had some healing ability with herbs. He had a lot of knowledge of herbs and different things.
Right.
And he was training the main character to be his assistant.
Right.
And the main character was insisting, there's magic, and I know you can teach me. And at some point he said, yeah, okay, but you got to do all this other stuff first.
Right.
But over the course of their dialogue, you learned about the world and about different, not necessarily different people, but there was a bad guy, and when it was referred to, he said, yeah, he's one of these kinds of people. He was dealt with the dark powers, and you want to stay away from that. You can get into it, but it's very dangerous, and you don't really want to, because the unknown and all that stuff.
So go ahead.
So if you're a PC who has a mentor like that, he's imparting a breadth of knowledge that your character might have. But not everybody, like he was, after his very short apprenticeship with that fellow, he was very much more knowledgeable than most people in the keep where he lived, because most of them were just, they worked in the kitchens and cleaned up and stuff like that. So he knew a lot more than they did, but he still didn't know that much. So,
well, I think it depends on, I think as a DM, what do you want your setting to be? Do you want it to be, to borrow something from WotC before 4th edition, points of light, where there's just these small little towns where you can live safely. In between that are vast tracts of dangerous wilderness. People don't know a lot about things outside of their little town, their little city. And you can say, yeah, that's what my wizard has learned. And that's okay. You had a very kind mentor. And that's fine. But there's also the flip side. You might be a wizard whose mentor was completely annoyed that he had to teach you. Maybe he owed your family a debt. And he'd say, first one of your family to show magical aptitude, I'm training them to be a wizard. So he teaches you the bare minimum and a lot of lessons you have to learn on your own. And he's really hard, and he pushes you to get out the door as soon as possible. As soon as you can cast your first level spell, he's like, get out. I got no time for this. I taught you how to be a wizard. You got to suck it up and be tough like I did. Learn it on your own. Good luck, kid.
Right.
I mean, you could, and then you're like, I only know so much. And I guess that begs the question, how much, and I don't go down this path because we talked about it some, when you face a troll, do you know to use fire against him? Does everybody know that? And my inclination is those sort of mythologies that we kind of take for granted every day. It's kind of fun to let people just use that knowledge, because it's more fun to surprise them with a little twist that they let them say. I know how trolls work. Okay, wait till you see this guy.
Right.
Yeah.
The other thing I was just thinking of this recently too, is with regard to that, you probably want to not lean on old tropes very much.
Right.
And
I think you
bring
let
in
the
new
players
stuff.
you let the players do it, but the DM surprises them all the time.
Well, no, I'm just saying I know when I've listened to Red Dice Diaries, he has essentially two podcasts. He does a regular podcast with him and his wife, John and Hannah, and then he also has an actual play.
Yeah,
and
I've been listening
to little bits of both. You get the idea that he, it seems like, unless I just don't know the rule set very well that he's using, he does unique monsters or different takes on current on standard monsters, and the names he uses for them are a little different. So
well, he and Hannah are, I mean, I love their monster episodes.
Yeah, they're great.
And you can tell John is into the real mythology side of it. Hannah might be too, but John always mentions that in mythology, this was so. Did you hear the Vegapygmy one recently?
Did I listen to that? I listened to a bunch of them. I think I heard.
Yeah, Vegapygmies didn't really strike a big chord with me, but I'm still wanting to listen because I like the things they have to say.
Actually, yes, I did listen to that because the way that they were talking about it reminded me of the little tiny primitive white dudes in Mummy 2.
Little tiny
primitive. So when they got to just outside the temple, there was that little jungle area. When they first got into that jungle area, they all these
spoilers.
They got attacked by these white dudes. That white, not as in Caucasian,
right?
But they were all dressed in rags, and they all looked grayish white. They looked like little goblins.
Oh, okay.
Goblins.
I don't remember that.
Yeah.
Okay.
But that's what I thought of because of some various things.
Yeah. But they definitely made them sound like little bastards, actually.
Yeah.
The Vegapygmy, they'll eat meat, they'll eat each other. I'm like, whoa, those are some real cannibal little dudes, man.
Right.
I used them back in the day. But yeah, so I think as a DM, you have to be, and when you say rely on tropes, are you talking about the DM relying on tropes or the players relying on tropes?
I'm talking about the DM. So it might be to mitigate some of the players know how vampires and werewolves and trolls and undead, they know how all that works, which is fine. But if you want there to be more of a challenge to figure things out and have a different world, you just use different monsters.
Or even research real mythology and put twists on ones that, I mean, I think as good as, I think a brand new monster is best. But I do think it's even more fun to put a little twist on a monster they think they know.
Right.
I mean, that's all. And I'm not, by a little twist, I mean a big twist.
Well,
the key drawback is not what you think it is.
Well, John and Hannah talked about the monster I can't remember the name of, but it was a big floating head. Floating head.
Varguia.
Yeah. And I was looking up Native American legendary creatures, and there's a similar one. It's a gigantic floating head.
Yes.
And it's these village elders were betrayed by some younger folks, and they were killed, heads chopped off, and they were thrown in this lake.
Yeah.
And then the heads all combined into one giant head, came back and killed the folks that killed them, and then everybody else, apparently. So yeah. Cool. So it's basically a giant disembodied head. It doesn't do all the other things that Varguil does.
Right.
And reattaches and all that other stuff.
Yeah.
But it was interesting.
Yeah. So what about this? Now you mentioned mechanics. This came to my mind. I said, how much knowledge is assumed the PCs know about the mechanics within the game world? And I had this example written down. What does a level 5 wizard translate to within the world? That is, do PCs recognize that, assuming Vancy and Magic, that fire and forget is a thing? Oh, we cast his fireball. We should be good.
That's interesting too. Yeah.
Do they even know? Well, obviously, I don't think you would know they're level 5. I don't know how you would, unless a DM told you. But if you're about 3rd or 4th level and I drop a fireball on your party, 5d6, you'd be like, whoa, we just got burnt up. We're still fighting. You're like, this guy better not have 3 or 4 fireballs or we're dead.
Right.
Or, I mean, we made a huge mistake, or Randy's not done something, or Randy's miscalculated our abilities. And let's say next
Randy's had a bad day.
Yeah. Used to be that. Yeah. So he's had a bad day. And then the next round he casts Magic Missile. You're like, okay, all right, 3d4 plus 4. That's more like it. 3d4 plus 3. That's more like it. And you're
It
like, okay,
depends on whether there are casters within the party. And,
right. Okay.
That maybe.
Oh, I see.
It depends. A character in the party who's knowledgeable about magic should be able to deduce a few things, depending on how long you've observed the other caster. You know, it's probably all right.
And so it's okay for players to, and let's not, I'm not trying to predict that he's 5th level. I'm just saying, well, he cast that one. He's probably done. You know, that was his big spell. Or, you know, he cast that spell. He can't do it too many more times because it's, you know, when you cast a spell, it leaves your memory. I think the mechanics, if players, because I've always thought about how would people talk about, like, I'm going to heal you, my son. Okay, I got 80 hit points. You heal me to 50. I need more healing. I mean, how does that exchange go? Does it look, is it obvious you need more healing? Because hit points aren't really your body. Right.
So yeah, see, and that is one of the abstractions have an issue. That is hit points have been described as an abstraction that represents luck, fatigue, and various other things. And only when you get down to a very few hit points does it really represent wounds.
Right.
Except that every healing spell, they're called healing spells.
Yeah.
You're like wounds, your moderate, and all the other stuff.
I'm healing your luck.
And then there's there's heal that heals all of your hit points. So all of that's contradictory. So
yes.
So that's why I'm okay somewhat with let's say the abilities in 5th edition that let you roll hit dice and get back 13th age has recoveries because hit points aren't supposed to be all wounding,
right,
bleedy stuff,
right,
but at the same time they kind of are. So
I think that part of the game is awfully gamey.
Yeah.
I mean, it can be a little, if you think too hard about it, it can be very jarring.
Right.
How do you have, I'm healing, you got 100 hit points, you're down to 6. I cast a spell, you get 27 back. I need more. I can't go on. I need more. And it's kind of weird. And it does affect how the players approach the game.
And so when you're talking about mechanical stuff, out of character, how would that narratively work?
Right.
You have to hand wave a little bit of it, which is less than satisfying. I'm not necessarily suggesting you throw out the whole hit point mechanic, but there's the hit point mechanic has been in D&D since the beginning, and there are other parts of the game that have gone away and been replaced and whatnot, and so it's possible hit points should change in some kind of way and have more
maybe
mechanic.
And how does it?
But would that necessarily change how you discuss healing at the table mechanically between players,
right?
And how it would be handled narratively?
I don't know. Would the cleric know that your 80 hit point barbarian is down to, let's do even less than that. Suppose he's down 20 hit points. I mean, would he really notice that? I mean, your player knows it mechanically because he saw you take 20 hit points off. And I think this part of the known unknown, I'm not sure in the world of Dungeons and Dragons you can answer that question, because I don't want people at the table, when we talked about this a little bit, saying, how hard are you? A little bit. I would cast a little heal spell on me. Okay, I cast Cure Light Wounds. I would cast one a little better than that.
Yeah. Sometimes we do. There is sometimes some hesitation because I know players probably want to sound more narrative, but it strains the language that we have.
I think it does, and I don't think there's an answer to that. I would argue in a hit point system, it's unavoidable.
Right.
You'd have to just say, how many hit points are you down? And we could say, and we just have to accept that in the story,
there's been some healing.
Josan the cleric realized you were weakened, and he decided to
Yeah.
reinvigorate you and give you some blessings from his god, and leave it at that.
You got to give some leeway. It's a game.
It's a game.
Yep. It's not okay. My perspective, I look at it's game first, story second. It is a game. When you get together, you get together to play a game. You don't get together to sit around the campfire and tell a story.
Not D&D.
Not in D&D. Not in D&D. Right. So when I approached the game, and I was imprinted, I suppose, like we talked about previously, my approach to the game is it's a game, and the story emerges from play, and after the session, when you kind of rehash it in your mind, or if you want to write about it or whatever, there's a story there that you can tell. You might have to finagle some of it, and you're going to drop all of the gamey talk at the table that you're going to have to do. And I don't think we should be particularly worried about people talking about, oh, I need a heal.
Right.
Because the player might have had a big sneeze session and didn't realize you got hit for 50 points of damage. And then once he has his senses back as a player in the real world, someone says, hey, he needs to get a spell. Oh, okay.
Dude, because I've seen it multiple times where people aren't paying attention, or the guy that gets hurt doesn't want to say anything because he's role-playing his character, and they get into the next fight. They're like, we're fighting the dragon. They'll get up there. Dude, I have 6 hit points. Dude, you're a 9th level fighter. Get up there and fight that dragon. I have 6 hit points. Really? Why didn't you tell me before? Well,
I'm Mr. Stoic.
Yeah, I didn't. Yeah, how would I say that? It's like, dude, okay, that's fine. We can assume Mr. Stoic isn't talking, and the cleric should have said, you tell him, Joe tells him, his Stoic, because my fighter's hurt. I need to be healed. Okay, I can heal you. And in the story, your fighter still goes, I'm going to help you out. And you're like, I don't need any help. Shut up. I'm giving you this. You need this. Be quiet. I'm fine. Whatever, cleric. And you can be that way. But the game is just going to get screwed up if you don't. And I've seen people do that. And they get mad at the cleric for not noticing. I'm like, dude, open your mouth. Yeah. Okay, so the last 2 then, if we're ready to move on, I kind of want to switch. I like to do number 5 first.
All right.
I want to talk a little bit about the impact of knowing versus not knowing. And I got a couple of the first 2 are traps and puzzles. And I want to make sure we're thinking about this in the same way, because you mentioned this to me as a suggestion. So the impact of traps, are you talking about whether you know there's a trap in the room or whether or not you don't? Or are you talking about something else?
I think it's more meta than that.
Okay.
So what is the impact of what we've been talking about affect gameplay at the table? And I was talking about traps and puzzles. I think because when I sent this to you, because the character might not know the answer to
a puzzle.
Riddle.
This is classic, riddle.
Right.
Yeah.
But the player does.
Right.
So why would the character know it necessarily?
Right.
I mean, so the classic Hobbit riddles.
Questions that Gollum asked Frodo and vice versa.
Right. So they had
Bilbo.
a battle of wits, whatever you want to call it. And that's all great. However, I think when you can have a puzzle in the game, and then if you're going to think about the story, you're going to have to rejigger it in the story, in the narrative, and because in a culture there are stories that are passed down. There are famous people, legendary people, and all that gets incorporated into poems and various things, and that bleeds into all kinds of other things like puzzles,
and riddles.
So riddles would be born. A lot of riddles that a character in a game, they would be born of their culture.
So riddles might be passed down through their culture.
Right. Or
so
just key words in it.
Yes.
Right. So, but you're going to have to think about that as part of the narrative after you've figured out the puzzle you've looked at on Google to
Yes.
challenge the players, because you can't challenge the character unless
You
you
really
give them a
can't.
check.
Right.
Which
Give them a
kind
check.
of, who cares? You would
Yeah,
have to say, there's a puzzle, roll a die.
Roll an intelligence check.
Puzzle. Right.
Now, here's something I do like. So the question, we've talked about this a little bit before. Let's say you're playing Dumbfighter guy, and I'm playing mediocre intelligence cleric, and Josh is playing super smart rogue, and Deb is playing the goddess of all wizardesses, intelligence, power, godlike. And we come to a puzzle. And this would be, I'm saying this because this would be the reverse, because I wouldn't know. Let's suppose your Dumbfighter knows the answer to the riddle immediately. I figure it out. Josh has no idea. And Debbie has no idea. The truth is, Debbie would be very likely. She's very good. You're pretty good. Debbie's very good at riddles. And, but she didn't. But are you going to pipe up Butch with an intelligence of 5? Hey, the riddle's an iron rod. That's the answer. Yeah, you do. And I say do it. I say because you're challenging the players. If you like puzzles and riddles, Joe answers the question, but we don't say Butch figured it out. Unless you want to for some just funny relief. That's the answer. I like the idea of the players putting their heads together. Joe says, I think it's this. Everybody goes, yeah, that sounds good. And then say, Josh's sly rogue says it, or Debbie's wizard goes, obviously it's iron rod.
Right. In the narrative.
And so in the narrative, that's what happened.
Yeah.
Dumbfighter and slow cleric, Randy's slow cleric doesn't figure it out.
Right.
They're like, I don't know. And so, yeah, I think that's you got to be careful with that. Now, to me, that's the best way to handle it. And I don't mind if you want to use a check, but the check wouldn't give you the answer. If the group is stuck, I've done it. I'll say, make a roll.
Yeah, give you a clue.
Usually my idea is on a D20, and I don't think I'd have a target. I would say, depending on how well you roll, I'll give you a decent clue or a really good clue. Because the part of it is for me, puzzles and riddles are in there to evoke a theme. You're dealing with the Fae. You're dealing with this fairy creature who loves to trick people. There's a Sphinx guarding the entrance to White Plume Mountain. They like to ask riddles. That's what Sphinxes do.
Right.
So I got to have a riddle. If the Sphinx is in there, you have to have a riddle. If you don't, it's just feeling kind of weird. What's the Sphinx doing? Or maybe it's a different type if you want to break, standard stereotypes. But my point is, I think if you're going to use puzzles and riddles, you have to be generous as a GM, and it can't be, if you don't get this riddle, game over, dude.
Right.
Yeah, I think that can be a big problem with knowing. That's a player knowing versus not knowing, and it can bring the game to a stall. And to harken back to what we talked about earlier, if you as a DM that going to that wizard's tower and the rogue not checking over the top of the door when he goes through because there's a tiny little beast with long arms there to choke him, if you encourage that sort of play, players are going to be checking behind everything, and you're not going to be able to get anywhere because Joe's rogue is like, look, we're going into this 10-foot-10 room. I am checking every corner, and I'm telling Randy where I'm checking, how I'm checking, and what order I'm checking, and then eventually when people get frustrated, you go, okay, we're going to do Omega pattern, for checking rooms, and then it becomes dumb. I think you have to I think with traps especially, I think the player has to be willing. You're a master thief, but you get caught with your pants down sometimes.
Right.
And sometimes it's just cool. And sometimes it's dumb luck. A lot of times you should figure it out, but there's going to be one where you didn't check above the door, and I'm going to do it just for dramatic effect and trust that I'm not going to try to murder your thief because you failed, because I put this little tricky, basically practically undiscoverable trap in there until it springs.
Right. And then you're going to roll a natural 20 on your attack roll.
Right. And you're going to fail your save.
And you're going to end up
dying.
Dead in one round.
Right. Even though it should have been not at all.
Right.
Well, I mean, I think you have to make sure that can't happen. You just don't make that kind of thing, otherwise you make
but
it
the
fair.
thing is, that kind of stuff happens in D&D.
Okay. So
if you're playing with crits and you're playing with that kind of stuff, if you have the crit in the game, crit's going to happen.
And that's the danger of messing with the narrative this way. That's the danger of that method I'm telling you, the other side of the coin, where you're not doing detect pattern Omega. Instead, we're going to be like, look, just do the tell me what you're doing. Check the door. You didn't look at the rug. You didn't say the rug. Surprise. Okay. and the player doesn't go, oh, I would have known that, or and the DM doesn't go, aha, it's a rug, a super rug of smothering created by an ancient wizard, save versus magic at -10 or dead.
Right.
You can't but there will be the problem where, like, okay, make a save, you get +4 because you probably would have noticed I rolled a 1. What? Okay, let me roll damage. Oh crap, I critted. That's the drawback. The best laid plans of mice and men, I planned for this to be nothing, and look, you roll a 1, I roll a 20, the 1 in 400 chance just happened.
Right.
And you say,
there's so many things you can do with a rug. It's not a rug, it's a cleverly disguised pit of quicksand.
And it's a mimic.
Or it's a mimic. You step into it and it's like a Venus flytrap. All kind. It's a rug. There's a rug in front of the door. Fireball.
So of those two styles of play, would you say, in relation to traps, how do you think it should be? Or do you believe it's 3rd edition? I check for traps, make a trap check. You've done all the checking in a 5-foot area. Whatever's there, I found it.
Like a lot of things, it depends on your group and how you've decided you're going to do things, either through just playing, or you set it session 0 and say, this is how we do things. One way or another, you already know. You figure it out, and what's comfortable for you. I do not like. I'm going to roll a check. I mean, I've gone through kind of an evolution.
You have, because I'll say you used to tell me, I just want to do why can't I just make a perception check? Why are we talking about looking under every nook and cranny?
Okay, so there's 2 sides to that. Looking under every nook and cranny, or I'm going to do a quick check of the room, Randy. What happens?
Right.
And then I'm going to, hopefully you're going to say, yeah, roll perception check. Or you're going to say, well, there's a few easy things that you're going to be able to find. You don't need to make a check.
Yeah.
But if you have something hidden that's dangerous, there's a monster lurking above the door. If I go in there and say, I'm going to check, blah, blah, blah. And you say, well, you didn't say you're going to check here, so I'm not going to give you a roll. But you could also say, here's a check at a penalty. That's fine too. So there's a lot of different ways to handle it. I don't like super in depth, I'm going to look under every rock types of situations every time we go into a room. That's boring. That's really boring.
I agree.
But also, if the game has a perception skill check in it,
yes.
If you're going to just say, well, I'm not going to do that.
Right.
It's kind of silly.
Why are you playing that game then?
Right. Let's play the game that doesn't have that. Or you let us know in the beginning, and then I won't worry about spending resources.
Well, if you look above in the notes, I think that example should be down here, number 5, not on number 4. My example was exactly what you're talking about, a search check, a perception check. And I wrote these 3, and I can't take credit for this. I stole this from somewhere where, one version is like what you said, gruesome detail. I'm testing player skill, and are they paying attention to what I'm describing? And then there's the opposite end, which is make your skill check. We call it fart the door, fart the room, or make a perception check. If you make the roll, you find everything that is hidden in the whole dang room. And then there's a middle level, which I think you're talking about, where maybe, it's a unique room. So I describe it, and Joe goes, I'm going to fart the door. I'm like, dude, there's a lot going on in here. Look at all the things. If I say, how are you going to approach this? Well, look, I'm going to go over to the table, and I want to check that table thoroughly. Okay. You didn't say you were going to the bed. So if there's something on the table to find that requires a maybe roll, you roll. If not, maybe the beast hiding under the bed comes out and surprises you. Right. To me, that's the solution, is the middle ground. And I could simulate that with a perception penalty. You're right.
And then you could say, well, if you would have gone to the bed first and checked underneath the bed, because there's a bed, you got to look under the bed first. Yeah.
And maybe going to the bed first, and to my mind, a very fair thing to make it worth your while is you don't even roll. You see a tail sticking out from underneath. There's a little tail, something odd, and a long, leathery snake-like appendage. What? The bed goes flying up, and there's this Wan T abomination coming up from underneath a trap door. And you're like, whoa, thank God I saw that. and didn't go over to the table first. I think there has to be I agree with you. There is a middle ground there.
There's yet another way that could be done is the way the passive perception from 5th edition. I don't know if it was part of 4th, but
I think it was.
Where everybody has a particular value of perception.
Mm-hmm.
And when you go into a room, the room might have a value, or various things in it might have a value of hiddenness, and you just check it. You don't no rolls.
Mm-hmm.
If your passive perception is here, say 15, and everything in the room has a hide value of 14, well,
you find it.
You find it. You find everything.
Yeah.
You could do it like that too.
Doesn't Professor Dungeon Master do that? He has his rooms. I think I saw a video way back when where he talked about how he gives rooms DCs, the difficulty for everything in there, basically, as far as finding stuff and discovering things and checking traps. They're just set. He has a little, I have to look it up. It's not quite that.
In that situation, you could narrate it very easily.
Mm-hmm.
You wouldn't have to worry about rolls. You wouldn't have to worry about people who want to check every nook and cranny and describe it in excruciating detail and taking 10 hours to check a 10 by 10 room.
I'd like to have something more than I want to roll perception in this room.
Right.
But I don't need you to go in gruesome detail every 5 by 5 square telling me how you outline the edges. What about PCs being secretive? This is a serious known versus unknown question. And this could be pro party or versus party. I mean, maybe their secret is that they're looking for this letter that would prove to the king that their family didn't dishonor him so many ages ago. And he doesn't want to relay it because he's embarrassed by it, or his father said, don't tell anyone about it. And so he's being secretive to get something that's not going to hurt the party, has nothing to do with your mission to go in and wipe out the necromancer. It just happens to be there. Do you think these sort of secretive things, and when he's looking in the room for something, I don't want anybody to notice me rifling through this stuff, should this be discussed in the open? Meaning he's like, okay, my character I don't want the rest of the party to know this. I want to try to be real careful and go over there and try to check this out, try to find if there's this, that parchment I'm looking for. And the player is completely open about it. Dude, I'm trying to find this. Or should it be, take him in? The worst one is, I hate doing this anymore. Take him into a separate room, pre-game discussion with the DM, email, text me during the game, I'm doing this, or give me a nudge, nudge, wink, wink, or pass little notes like back in the day. How do you think that sort of not knowing, players shouldn't know if he's doing this or have a chance to not know?
So I'm fine with that kind of a secret. I don't care. If you have a secret like that and you don't want the rest of the party, I don't care. I don't want to know.
Yeah.
How the DM and the player handles that is tricky, because if you want to handle everything that happens in game at the table, there's absolutely no way, unless, let's say, at the very start, but then at the very start of the character creation, there was an aside that nobody else was privy to, and you said those things. I'm going to, when I go to places and there's paperwork to check, I'm going to look.
Right.
But that is fraught with problems because you might forget as the DM.
Yep. Right.
So the player could be over there giving you all kinds of nonverbal cues,
right?
Everything, and
nudge, nudge, wink, wink. Yeah.
And you're not getting it.
Right.
You've totally forgotten everything. So
Joe, I told you before, I'm married. Stop winking at me.
Right. So you might have to be, if you want to have a secret like that, you're going to either you're going to have an issue like that crop up now and again,
right?
Or you're going to say, I'm doing this thing, and try to keep the rest of the group, the players, from, you just say, hey, I'm doing this thing, it's secretive, and you just don't know. I'm not saying.
Would you? So if I have this, I'm a fellow player. Would you rather me, and especially if it's pro, it's not going to hurt the party. Would you rather me really try to be secretive, Randy, to keep it from you, or me to say, look, guys, I have my own personal mission, and I'm not backstabbing anybody. Don't worry, I'm not allying with the bad guys. I just have a personal mission that I have a reason to keep secret from the party. Would you rather me announce that? Because there are some people that there's some people that like, I mean, and my wife would admit it because they're like, because there's been time, you get burned a couple of times.
No secrets. No secrets.
Well, it gets hard to let it go.
Right. So I don't care. So I'm perfectly fine with you passing a note back and forth with the player.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'll wait for a second. If nothing happens, keep going.
Now, some players can't, the knowing versus not knowing, and my wife would be one of them. I think she'd admit it. She'd start to be getting very nosy with that character, what he's doing, even if she has no reason to be. Part of that's her own personal personality. She likes to know stuff. When there's secrets, she loves to figure them out because she's a puzzle solver, right? She likes puzzles. She plays puzzles all the time on her iPad. So it's understandable that she finds that, but it can be annoying for the players. Like, why is your cleric so interested in what I'm doing all the time?
We hardly say you can do as a player, your wife, is to pass an empty note to the DM.
Yes.
Yeah. And then that will get your wife's attention.
Yes, it will.
And then she won't leave it alone.
No, she can't.
Mm-mm.
And that's just and I don't want to, I'm not bashing Deb. I'm just saying that's how she is.
That's how she is, and
she can't.
There's good reasons for it.
Yeah, and
I was there for some of it.
And we've had our own experience with the rogue that backstabs the party or the character that turns and joins the bad guy. Mm-hmm. I mean, if it's against the party, I don't know. I'm kind of done with all that. I'm done with the plant. We used to joke about evil Greg and good Greg, our two Gregs in the group. And quote unquote, evil Greg was the guy that always got picked in one shots to be the turncoat. And after a while, he's like, please don't make me that because I'm tired of doing that. It's not my thing.
Right.
And so it's like, I don't know. It's a tough call, I guess, for me. I personally, as a player, would love to know it. Not what the secret is, but to know that you have one. And here's why. St. Joe has a secret. He's seeking this sword, a family heirloom that was stolen by this ogre years and years ago. And then it was taken over by a bandit. And supposedly it's in this keep. And it's something that will restore his family to prominence. But he can't announce it because too many folks don't care for his family. And so he just wants to keep it secret to himself. But if Joe tells me, hey, Randy, or tells the party, look, I'm seeking something. I'm not looking to screw you guys. I'm not going to get a magic item and steal it. I'm just seeking something that for my character has a story narrative component. And so what I would do, depending if my character I had decided he's very inquisitive, an intelligent wizard, and Joe's a rogue. And first few times Joe does some weird stuff on searching. I don't pay attention. But then after a while, I wouldn't just look for it, but like that was kind of blatant. When I have a chance to notice, and the DM goes, yeah, and I make a roll and I make it. But I wouldn't be like, what are you doing? I would do it because that would add coolness to your story. And and whatever you told me you were doing, I would believe. Oh, okay. Not a big deal. Because you're like, oh, man, I dodged a bullet. And it's kind of cool.
Yeah. And you might not just jump up and say, I saw you do that in front of everybody. You might take it to the side and say,
we go have a beer at the tavern. Dude, I saw you doing this. What's up? Oh, I was looking, I thought I noticed this Noble's mark and I was worried it was this guy because he's bad news. Oh, okay. It wasn't that? No, all right. And I would do it to make it more like a story because that's what happens in stories, right? And as a friend or an ally, which we would be, our characters, I'd be like, I believe what you say. I have no reason to believe you're cheating us. And I think it's better to tell the group. I mean, I wouldn't care if you said exactly what you were trying to do. I would still do the same thing. I would ignore until it seemed blatant, and then I would approach. But my plan is, after I approach, whatever Joe says, if he's role playing in such a way that it's saying, Randy, let it go because I don't want to reveal anything yet, I'd let it go.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's fine. And I think that's fine. I think that's fun. That's how I would want to do it.
Yeah. And, as far as all that goes with backstabby players, I'm okay with, and I've heard this talk in a couple of other podcasts. I'm not sure. We talked about it a little bit in a different episode. I'm fine with some tension.
Yes.
Not everybody has to be, hunky dory with each other.
Mm-hmm.
So long as we're cooperating.
Right.
For the most part.
Because groups can't.
You can't have the loner saying, you guys stay away from my stuff or I'll stab you in the eye. And
Right.
then he stabs somebody in the eye because he looked at him cross-eyed.
Yeah,
So-
it's like, dude. Well, even if he doesn't stab me, I'm like, so you would stab me because I'm looking at you funny.
Yeah.
And we've been in this Underdark. We've been in Undermountain for 3 months together, and you would stab me,
Yeah.
even though my spells have saved you countless times.
Right.
I got news for you, buddy. We're done.
Right.
Once we get to the surface, you go your way. And most of the party would agree.
Yeah.
Be like, get out of here. Parties couldn't have that. I mean, I don't mind a little bit, but it's got to be, I think it's better if it's telegraphed. I mean, I think it'd be cool
telegraph it. Sure.
if we're playing, it's like, my wizard believes in order and follow the rules. Joe's rogue is happy-go-lucky, and he thinks, screw the cops, fight the power. The only way you can help people is outside of the law. Okay? We're both good. And we'll say, look, me and Joe are going to butt heads a lot and tell the party. And we're going to get into debates, but it don't mean nothing. It ain't ever going to end in fisticuffs. It's going to end in, all right, you believe you're that. I don't like it, but you don't like what I think. Let's get back to what we're doing. We got a dragon to kill.
Right.
Yeah.
Telegraphing is a good
I think
way to handle it.
Yeah, I think it really is.
And I did that in one of Philip's games. I may have mentioned this. We were in a desert. We were having trouble figuring a particular thing out,
Mhm.
and Butch was the character I was playing, and Butch was getting bored. And Butch said, "Something better happen, or I'm going to make it happen.
Right.
I'm going to start making stuff happen. We need to figure something out."
Right.
And-
My character's getting really bored. And when he gets bored, people's heads gets lopped off. Just
And
you
so
know.
I was saying that not to be a dickhead, but just for dramatic effect.
Yeah.
Because he didn't.
Yeah.
Butch never did anything like
No.
that. He just said it a few times.
Butch is very coarse, very blunt, very straight in your face, but he's not a murdering maniac.
Right.
I mean, he's just like, get out of my way. I
Right.
got time for your bull crap. And so anyway, I think we're ready. Why don't we wrap this up with my number 4, if you don't mind, if you're ready.
Sure.
What about the GM screen? Now, I threw this on. There's kind of a joke, but kind of a connected thing. And I'm more considered with, there's a lot of discussion about GM screens. I don't want to go too deep into this, but GM rolls behind the screen. There's the knowing versus not knowing, not just for the players, but the DM has the option of not taking that role. You could fudge it. But I don't want to go down that. That could be a topic, but I'm more interested in what if the thief is sneaking into the keep? Maybe I should make his stealth check
Correct.
because he doesn't know if he's successful and quiet, or he's checking.
There are plenty of times that you can't know that your task that you think you've done it correctly.
Mm-hmm.
But there are situations where you can't know that you failed until the other shoe drops,
Mm-hmm.
and bad stuff happens.
Or I hate this too, like a module or adventure I have planned. Look, on the first round, the assassin is going to move in through the window. If nobody notices, he's going to wait around behind the dresser. Okay, and he's going to use his scroll that he stole and silently cast invisibility. Give him a notice roll when he comes in. Get him a notice roll to hear what's going on. So I say make a notice roll, and maybe I'll say if you have a modifier to notice something visually, you can add it because he's sneaking in. Everybody rolls, nobody succeeds. So the assassin moves behind the mirror or whatever. What's going to happen? Every player is going to start. I look over here. I move over here.
Yeah.
I do this. I pull my sword out. Wait a minute. You didn't notice anything. And it's very hard for a player, this is knowledge, to act upon knowing that the roll was failed.
Right.
Or believing that it was failed.
Right.
Whereas if I roll behind the screen, I'll be, oh, look, nobody noticed.
Right.
What are you guys doing? Now, the dice clacking behind the screen might Joe go, uh-oh, we better get ready.
Right.
Because you don't know what I'm rolling. You might think an ogre's ready to run through the door. And then I so what are you doing? Nothing. And then of course you're suspicious. So, but
that's a good, okay. So that's a good justification for the passive scores rather than die rolls. Because no matter how much you're like, okay, I won't act like I don't know. I mean, I won't act like I know, but you do know.
Right.
So there's that. Okay. This is almost always brought up with hiding and sneaking.
Yes, almost always.
Okay. How about a diplomacy situation or a deception situation?
There
So
you
you
go.
believe you have deceived this person.
Right.
You've actually failed. And
Joe's rogue has dressed up as the halfling courtier, even though he's a dwarf.
Right.
And so I think
people.
I look great, man. I'm a halfling. I'm Frodo.
And these people, not only do they know that, not that they realize you've tried to deceive them, they are going to counter deceive you into thinking that they believe what you've done.
Right.
So it's a double fake,
right.
And they take you down the primrose path to jail.
Correct. They set you up where there's no getting out.
So if everybody's rolling their dice out in the open, that kind of situation can never happen.
Yeah.
Not without everybody saying, yeah, okay, I guess I'll act like I this stuff is going on.
I think so. Do you think that the DM should roll the diplomacy check or the deception check?
Well, either the DM takes on the rolling of the dice behind the screen, and on all that, or you do the same kind of deal.
A passive check.
Yeah, just you have a score. They have, you just bump head with the numbers.
But that feels okay. So that feels weird because it feels not counterintuitive, but counter normal to how we're gonna set this up. I'm gonna use my disguise skill to turn into look like a halfling, and I'm going in there. I'm a chubby halfling, and I'm gonna go in there and I'm gonna smooth talk this lady so I can find out what's behind that vase and the secret door behind there. And so the player is naturally going to grab his dice and go, I want to roll.
Correct. So under the current paradigm, especially in 3.5 and 3.5, 4th and 5th Pathfinder, that kind of switcheroo, unless you said, okay, when there's a head-to-head thing like this where you can't necessarily know your success or failure, this is how we're going to handle it. So you have that mechanic set up in advance. But if every other time when you've had a deception check, you've let them roll, except this one, you didn't, because you have this plan that you're going to try to trick them.
Right. Are you gonna say try to trick them or try to simulate how it would really be?
Right.
Because they can't be even sure that they're even successful. They're going to believe they are.
Right. So that might be straining a dice rolling system a little bit too much. Might be.
Unless you give them a chance. So if you want to be fair, you go in and the guard at the door, I say, welcome. And he goes, I am so-and-so, Cobblefoot, the halfling trader. You are? Okay. And have the guard look at him kind of funny, and say, looks like a dwarf wearing halfling makeup, and so, but you have the guard act funny and the player be like, why was he acting funny? Maybe he recognized me. Oh crap. Give him a chance. Right. And then I think, but you're right, it does change the mechanics drastically. I think passive roles can have a lot of value in these sort of things. Yeah, for sure.
Right. I mean, if you let them roll and they roll low, but not real low. Let's say they roll like a 9.
Yeah.
That's possibly that you could still make that work.
Correct.
And then you roll behind the screen and then you do what you do.
Right. But if they roll a 2,
they're
gonna be like, I'm only gonna fool the biggest idiot. I have to say, I think it's better for the DM to take control. I think a passives, and I think that's something you should probably announce at session 0. Look, I'm going to have passive roles, passive challenges, because these situations may come up. And when they do, you're just going to have a passive score. I'm going to take your skill. I'm going to add it to 10. That's what it's going to be. And I'm not going to have you roll. So just because you won't know if you're successful or not. Yeah, I think so.
Now there's some, within a narrative, you could say that if this disguise situation, you could disguise yourself, and then you walk in front of the players and the other characters in your group and say, how did I do? Would you be fooled? then you can test. That's
Yes.
fine.
That's fine too.
And then they're like, no, you just look like a dwarf with a halfling wig on.
Yeah, you look dumb,
ridiculous.
dude. Don't even try it. You're like 100 pounds more than a halfling. No way, dude. Yeah. So that's cool. All right. Shall we move on to a little Cabin Con moment?
Yeah.
Okay. So this time I thought I would talk about, because we're getting close. I mean, we're inside a month now, right? May 13th is our big day. What do we know
Yes.
about Cabin Con 15 so far? Well, bad news. 2 of our buddies may be out,
Yes,
which is
very
going to
bad
bring that,
news.
and one of them, another one may have an issue. So we're maybe down 4 guys. We're looking at probably 16 people. If it happened today, we'd have 16 people. So, I mean, the number's not horrible, but a
Right.
little bit less than I thought. We got a superheroes theme, which is pretty sweet.
Yes.
You've already seen the t-shirts. They look
Yes.
fabulous. What games are being offered? I think I've mentioned mine a couple of times. Have you heard any others besides, or should I mention mine? Oh, I'm going to run Sword and Wizardry White Box. I'm going to run Aliens RPG. I may or may not run the first issue of a series of, it's kind of a superheroes theme going along game. Depends on if our boy Josh makes it or not. The first issue, if he doesn't go, I'm not running it. And I'm going to run some Aliens, OD&D, and then I'm going to run 2 13th Age sessions.
Yeah, I'm probably going to run some 13th Age. Probably going to run. I'm going to try to have Rollmaster or Hackmaster set up.
Yeah, I know our boy Tim is going to have. I think he's going to have Legend of the Five Rings, and he's going to have Spelljammer. And you know, John's going to be loaded down. That dude's ready
Right.
to
He
run.
always has all kinds of
He's
stuff.
ready to run 5e, probably Pathfinder, probably anything. I don't know what he's doing. He's doing one of the superhero issues. We're calling the sessions issues. I don't know. Larry N usually has something up his sleeve. Ben will bring some board games, I'm sure. I'm sure Dave will probably run 13th Age. I'd be shocked if he didn't have a 13th Age game or 2.
Right.
And mine's going to be for the 6th level character, so we can kind of continue our campaign. But that's all I know. I talked to Philip. He said he's not sure. He might run a 5e game. He might not. He might be coming just to play. So I'm cool with that. I don't care. With me, I'd be happy to run the whole time. I'd run probably every slot, but I don't think I will. I think I'll play some. And I think one of our guys that's not coming was doing the Family Feud style trivia game. I may end up taking the reins from them. So it's a lot to go on my plate, but I might. So.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. Because if he doesn't come.
Yeah. So the thing I wanted to announce, though, for those 3 or 4 listeners, we are considering Biggest Geekus is going to be going to YouTube over Cabin Con. We hope, because right now it's a plan. This weekend we're going to be getting with one of our friends, Patrick, who's been on there a couple times. We're going to do some practice with some digital cameras, uploading some videos, developing a channel. We hope one day in the future this maybe becomes a little bit more than just a Cabin Con extravaganza. If I'm remembering right, I think we're going to try to have a little bit of a video every single night, right? Thursday, Friday, and Saturday.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it may be long. It may start at midnight. If it does, Joe and I will be unconscious in about 30 minutes, but we'll see how it goes. So look for maybe another announcement, hopefully next week with a little more firmness and maybe a little channel site information so you can check stuff out. Maybe we'll even put a little introductory thing there this weekend.
Some
preliminary so someone can see us.
If we do get the YouTube thing going, we may end up putting previous episodes where we have video that we can just throw together.
Yes, because we've had videos for about 5 or 6 episodes. We just haven't posted.
At least.
Yeah.
And then there's the ones. Oh, I don't know if I downloaded the. I don't know how many of our earliest episodes I have video. We didn't have our cameras on.
Hey, if it goes well and we get the YouTube thing real comfortable, maybe we'll go back and revisit some topics and see how our old episodes change when we revisit something from early on,
Sure.
Could be fun. And so we'll let people know for sure if it's gonna be live. I'm thinking it's gonna be. I think we're gonna have some YouTube videos from Cabin Con, and I want to have all the guys on there, every one of them, not all in one night, but like the handful each night come up and talk a little bit about what they think of Cabin Con. Maybe if we're lucky, we'll even get a little play action. People can see people playing games or just see the place. We'll figure it out. We're going to work on it this weekend. So I'm pretty pumped though. It's so close. It's crazy. I'm getting
It is
really
very
excited.
close.
Getting excited. All right. Last segment then. Gonna do a new segment. Instead of beat this game, we're gonna try dig this setting, which is a variant of beat this game, where we're gonna choose a setting, and it doesn't have to be D&D. It'll probably be a lot of D&D because we love it, but it could be some other game like Deadlands. I imagine the Deadlands Weird West setting could come into play.
Sure.
But today we're gonna do an oldie but a goodie, the World of Greyhawk. Not the first setting. Technically, Blackmore was the first setting, but this was the first setting Randy ever had.
Right.
That I ever purchased, the World of Greyhawk. And so I'd like to discuss its pros and cons, best and worst aspects, and then our experiences in it. And if anything memorable. And of course, we're going to rank it on the same scale, extra small to 2x. So I'm going to take the bull by the horns. Greyhawk was my first setting. I fell in love with the Gazetteer. The map blew me away. I still have it. So many little holes, and it was falling apart. I taped it, and then I had it laminated. It did not fall apart. I still have my Greyhawk map. It's beautiful. It's colorful. We would pull that out. It was such a ritual. It had to be a part of every game. At some point, we want to know where we were on the map, where we're going. I just love the map.
Sometimes we would just say, "What's there? What's over there?"
We want to go to the dim forest. Okay, let's go.
Oh, that was always a bad idea.
Well, yeah, because I had read about it. There was some powerful. I said, the Mage of the Valley, you don't want to go there. And I was like, he's super powerful. And I thought he was like evil. I don't know what I thought, but that I put a lot of doom and I put a lot of fear into players going to the dim forest. But, we started in Hamlet. We played Temple of Elemental Evil, Keep on the Borderlands. I ran every module in Greyhawk. And I felt Greyhawk, when you look back at the Gazetteer, there was just enough information to feel like you could do something there, but they didn't overwhelm you with stuff. It was definitely a playground for Randy to do his own version of Greyhawk.
Which is, I think, superior. I love Greyhawk a lot more than Forgotten Realms. There's more lore associated with Forgotten Realms.
A lot
Certainly.
more.
There's a lot more.
People know Elminster and the Blackstaff a lot more than they know, say, Bigby and Rary the Traitor. Maybe they know more than Kanan, because a lot of the D&D spells were named after the Greyhawk campaign that happened in Gygax's home. So I think that sort of that freedom meant a lot, and I think that was one of the best things about it. It wasn't super crazy detailed.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, the other thing about you didn't have. You felt you could, if you adventured for a while, make a name for yourself that mattered within Greyhawk.
Yes.
In Forgotten Realms, there's so many high level PCs, big names, so much stuff there. You have no hope.
I mean, Greyhawk, you get to 12th level, you're like, dude, you're a guy to be reckoned with. You look at the Gazetteer and all the leaders of the realms, you're as high or higher level than many rulers of whole kingdoms.
Right.
And you're like, dude, I'm legitimate. Not that makes you the most powerful thing in the universe. More than Kanan didn't rule at all. And last stat I saw on him, he was 27th level wizard. So he was no slouch. And, but I think that, it definitely felt like it was a place you could make a name for yourself. I felt like, because most of the adventures were kind of from first edition, basic D&D. It was very much, I thought the setting lent itself to zero to hero, and you could become someone that people would definitely respect at the 9th to 12th level. And if you were to play to the really high levels, you'd be someone to be reckoned with across the whole world.
Yeah.
Yeah. As far as my experiences go, I'm going to put Temple of Elemental Evil first. That taught me a lot about the relationship between the different Furiandi and the different kingdoms there, and how, where Ayaz played in things, he had a little impact there. It made me want to know more about the lore because they wrote about that. I think the Lost Caverns of Sojanth, which I think were placed in Greyhawk, we had great times playing that. I guess for me, it's a lot of modules that I recall, though I did do some of my own stuff. And I did transition from, I played that through 2nd edition. Greyhawk was I tried a little Forgotten Realms, just couldn't get into it. And then I went back to Greyhawk, and then I transitioned to Planescape, and that's when I started collecting all those box sets. But yeah, Greyhawk was my first love, no doubt about it. I'm trying to think of bad aspects to it.
I can't really think of anything.
A lot of people. Go ahead.
The only bad is actually what I think is good. Most people, I think, who pan Greyhawk, they pan it because it is bare bones to them.
Right. I've heard bland.
Bland. Right.
Because
I don't know why you would call it bland.
Well, because there was Gord the Rogue, and that was about it.
Well,
as far as
I didn't like most. Yeah, I didn't like most of TSR or any D&D related novels. Not really.
Right.
I didn't really like Dragonlance that much.
No, I know.
And so I never looked at it that way. But I thought that the map was very evocative.
Oh yeah, the map. I wish I could think of the lady's name. There's a lady that did that map. Darlene, I think, was her name. She went by one name, and she was an artist. I think she drew that map.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Oh, and it's just it's still the best map. I mean, I wish I had a mint copy, in framed. I would love to have one that's just crisp in a frame.
Yeah, good luck with that. You probably pay more for that than that Tiamat. Was it Tiamat's coming out?
500 for
yeah, you probably
$400. Yeah, I ain't buying that. I thought I would, but I'm not.
Yeah.
So as far as drawbacks to it, I mean, I think the bland thing maybe. I can't think of really too many drawbacks. I thought if you want to make your own world, if you want to not make every little detail, but run a world where you can do mostly what you want, Greyhawk's hard to beat.
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't like, it just wasn't a lot of definition stuff outside of the modules. Things weren't perfectly defined.
Right. And everything gave you everything they did describe was, I think, very evocative. It said, there was lots of things that made you think about what might be there.
Yeah. Castle Zagig.
Right.
The castle, the ruined castle from the Mad Archmage Zagig, right in the city of Greyhawk. There was the Circle of Eight, the wizards that were pulling the strings across the world, up to doing various political machinations, Mordenkainen, Tensor, Rary, Bigby, all the names that are associated with the spells. You're like, man, what are they up to? And so
what are those assassin monks?
Oh, the Scarlet Brotherhood.
Scarlet Brotherhood, yeah.
Dude, racist. I mean, that was close to being a Nazi group as you come. They were human only, monks and clerics and wizards, and they were evil SOBs. And they were infiltrating cities and organizations, trying to control the world. I think they were part of that Slavers series of modules. They were behind all that crap. Yeah, they were a great evil organization. Ayas, you had an actual demigod who lived on the planet.
Yeah,
and controlled an area, his domain. So I'm with you. And Vecna came from Greyhawk, the Tomb of Horrors, the Sararak. So I mean,
it might be that we are just nostalgic because it's what we started out with.
Could be,
but
and that's fair.
But sometimes less is more. So no, they didn't have every village described in great detail.
They didn't have 74 novels for every kingdom.
No, but I don't think you need that to have a good setting.
No,
and that's the biggest strength of Greyhawk, is it gave you a great framework with evocative things to get your imaginative juices going, so that you can make good games. Now, if you want everything made for you, then Greyhawk isn't for you.
No. I mean, there's people that have advanced it online. I think there's Greyhawk websites that have done a lot of stuff, but it's your own. If you buy the box set, or you do your own.
Yeah.
How would you rank this thing? So
it's hard not to give it a 2X.
I would, but I think I'm only going to give it an extra large, just because I'm not going to say it. I've said it before. My favorite setting of all time.
Oh yeah, Planescape. Yeah.
So it's extra large. I absolutely love it. It is. If Planescape is 1, then Greyhawk is 1A with a bullet. I would play it anytime. In fact, I ran my first 5e campaign in Greyhawk for 10 levels a full year, and I realized how much I missed the setting. So yeah, it's up there. I mean, if someone said if I had to say 2X, it wouldn't hurt my feelings.
Right.
But I'm leaning toward extra large. It's definitely
I'm leaning 2x because I think Planescape would have to do 1x for me.
Okay.
Whenever we end up doing that.
We're going to do Planescape. We're going to do Dark
yeah.
Sun for sure. Yeah. All right. So I think I'm going to wrap this up here.
Yes.
If you'd like to support our show, please check out our website at www.biggestgeekuspodcast.com/support. Any contribution is much appreciated. We thank you for your consideration. Please share the podcast with your friends. It's available most places you can get your podcast. If you have an app that's unsupported, let us know. Our email is questions@biggestgeekuspodcast.com, though it's not just questions. It can be comments or whatever. You can use the Anchor app to call in and leave messages, or just, I think there's other ways to do it. John and Jason tend to use the Anchor app, I think.
Yeah, there's also something called SpeakPipe, but it has some issues.
Yeah, feel free to send any questions or comments that way. We'd also like to encourage you to listen to some of our our favorite podcasts, which include Red Dice Diaries with John Allen and his wife Hannah, Radio Grognard with Glenn Hallstrom, Tale of the Manicore, a dramatized sort of quasi-actual play. The Tavern Chat has now become more than just a podcast. He's streaming all the time, almost every day, with Eric Tinkart. Good stuff there.
He's trying to make a network.
Yeah, he is. We may have to join his network if he'd let us. Nerds RPG Variety Cast with Jason and Shadow the GM with Barry. So, and I'm listening to another one. I'm not ready to recommend it yet, but I think I might soon. I told you about it before the podcast. I'm really kind of liking that one too. It may join the list if Joe gives it the thumbs up as well. Well, this is Randy.
And this is Joe.
Oh, before we go, dang it. We can't do it. We're going to have a little something after this. Right?
Oh, yes.
After the podcast is over. I forgot. It's been a long one, but we visited the positive material plane early on. We're going into the negative material plane. So after the music, you may want to stick around and listen to us gripe a little bit.
Yes. If you're faint of heart, maybe not.
Maybe not, because I'm not holding back.
Yeah.
So anyway, it's Randy.
This is Joe.
Remember, can't be big like us, then be geeks like us. Okay.
All righty.
Yeah.
Let's take off the gloves.
Yep. Kid gloves are off. No more BS.
Now,
okay.
So go ahead.
No, I was going to say I like this negative material plane segment. May not stay here. This is my first thing I just thought of today. We may just put it in there, like after the last segment, making it segment 5. We'll see. But my first issue, and it's old. It's a week or two old, maybe 3 weeks old. That POC gamer, Panzer Lion, that requested to have his name removed from Candlekeep Mysteries, and it's his right. Mm-hmm. But honestly, what a baby.
Very big baby.
He's mad because his 27 pages of Gripply history and culture were removed from a product, and my adventure was changed. Doesn't look anything like my adventure. Dude, you were paid. I mean, Eric Tinker had a great podcast about it. You were a hired hitman. Mm-hmm. Write this. We don't want to hear about your Gripply history. But it could be fabulous. And maybe if he was all in there, I would love the adventure. But what a crybaby.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't have any. I don't know. It's
no sympathy. If it's so great, he can recover all of that IP that he wrote, mm-hmm. since it's still his, because he mm-hmm. didn't. Unless there's some kind of contractual thing.
Right, there might be a thing. They might own it.
As long as he owns clear rights to that IP that he wrote, if it's so great, let him write it, produce it, and let everybody see it and see if they'll pay for it.
Well, and Eric said, the truth is, if you want to make stuff that's your own, you got to produce it yourself these days.
Yeah. And
making PDFs is easier than it's ever been. I've been told. I don't know. But if you sell stuff to the big boys or anybody, any company, Goodman Games or whatever, you're selling it to them. It's their stuff now. And if they give you an assignment, do what they ask you to do. And if you go above and beyond, they may say, that's cool. We like it. Or they may say, we don't want that crap.
Right.
Cut it out.
And this is his first offering.
Yep.
If Monty Cook was asked to write something for Candlekeep Mysteries,
yep.
He probably wouldn't even touch it. They would,
no,
unless they needed to cut words for space.
Right.
That would be it. But
And I've not read this. I don't think this dude's Monty Cook.
right. So right. If it was super good,
Yeah,
you think they would keep it? Probably,
sure they would.
Unless there was some other IP issue, or just this is not what we want.
I
But
really like how you wrote this, dude. We think it's rich, but doesn't fit the Forgotten Realms.
we like it, but not here. Do it over here.
Right.
If it was good, they probably would have done something like that.
Yeah. So yeah, I have no sympathy for him. Apparently, some people online do. I don't.
I didn't read a lot of it. Is he claiming that it's like racism that's making them do this?
He brought up Orion Black. That
Okay.
I don't know what he was.
Another
Non-binary crybaby.
crybaby.
Said, "Oh, I can't believe I'm working for WotC for a year and I'm not the head of director of Forgotten Realms." I mean, he didn't say that, but basically that's what he was saying. I can't believe it's been a year and I'm not writing their next big adventure book. Dude, it's been a year. You're lucky you're not just shuffling papers and carrying papers to the printer.
Right.
You know, plenty of apprenticeships last a year.
Right.
Why do you think you should be, even that guy, why do you think, whatever, you just been somewhere a half a minute, you think you should run the joint? Get over yourself.
Yep. If you're so great, write some stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Show us that you're great.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently they'll be settled.
Orion Black must have written something, but even so, I don't care if you have written some freelance stuff. Maybe they don't, who cares? Maybe they don't find you that good and they want to make you, maybe it's a union shop.
And considering how vocal the Orion Black guy was, is I read a little bit about that. I read a little bit of what he wrote. And I can just imagine him in the professional setting being a complete dickhead.
Yes.
So he probably rolled into there saying, all right, I'm changing everything.
Right.
In essence.
Yep.
Because sometimes people do that. And it's always a bad idea.
Oh, yeah. Come on. You don't know better than people been doing something for 20, 30 years. Oh, get over yourself.
Even if you
can't do that.
Don't know. Show me.
Don't tell me. Yeah. Show me. Yeah. And you're going to start like everybody else at the bottom. Mm-hmm. Okay. The second thing was, and I was glad to hear this. Remember the issue we had talked a little bit. I don't know if we talked on the podcast, but I called it, I don't know, gendered pronouns for miniatures that WizKids did. Apparently it's not on the packaging, but it's on their website where they'll have a dragonborn fighter who is he, him, they is there. It's written on their website as this figure is a he, him, they, or a she, her, zer, or whatever. And I'm just like, where have we gotten, dude? Seriously? It's a freaking miniature. It's a piece of plastic. I wish I remember the lady's name. Somebody on YouTube blasted him, said, if you lift the pallet and skirt, it's flat.
She was a spokesperson, or maybe for the NRA, I think. Okay. And now she has a YouTube. She's a conservative person.
That makes her wrong automatically.
Yeah, automatic.
So I
haven't completely agreed with stuff that she has said, but when I heard her talk about this, I was like, yeah, this is dumb.
Yeah. I don't know. Companies, who do they think they're impressing? Seriously, 4 or 5 people? I don't know.
I wonder about that sometimes. How many? So in the wider scope of the public, the folks that would be concerned about this stuff, proportionally, very small.
Yes.
Inside gaming, I imagine it's proportionally bigger.
Yes, because
how much?
Well, here's why. Here's the dirty secret. Gaming is by default inclusive and diverse. Has been since we played.
Right.
I don't want to hear about, it's a white man's game. Look, it might have been more white guys playing back in the day. But I'm telling you, in 1990 at Indiana University, I played with a very diverse group of players. At one time, I was the only white cisgendered male, straight male in the group.
Right.
That was it. So, this was back in 1991, 90, and this was not a shock at all. If you went into game stores in the 80s, you would see all sorts of folk of all stripes. Right. And I don't buy it. I don't buy it. It's not It's not a thing in our hobby. We are by far, as nerds, the most accepting. Of course, people will go, oh, but I had this experience and she had this experience and he had this experience. Those are anecdotal. And so you say, well, so is yours, Randy. Okay. But everybody I know says the same thing. And it's still anecdotal, but I don't get it. I don't, they have to look so hard to see this crybaby shit in our hobby that it just drives me up a wall. Right. Orcs are black people. Orcs are bad representation. No, they're not. They're orcs.
Never have been.
Never have been.
Orcs are orcs, and that's all they are.
Yeah. And I tell you, this is leading me to a general annoyance. I mean, I'm just aggravated. And I listened to the RPG pundit, his Wizards, Crazy Wizards, Dead Dragons, and the woke stuff on Kickstarter.
Right.
And I feel, I mean, I think the guy's a little, sometimes he's a little demagogish. He just kind of preaches this one thing.
It's his thing.
It's his thing. But I like the dude. I really do. I'm sorry. Yeah. I like him. And I think he shoots us straight for the most part. What he believes is legit. And I'm tired of this pervasive bullcrap coming into the role-playing hobby. It's not a boys club. It's not a white guys club. It never has been. Last time I was the last game I played at Gen Con, I was the only one. No, of 6 players, there were 2 white guys. Oh, and the white guy's girlfriend was black, and the rest of them were black. And they were teaching me how to play 5e D&D. I mean, it's like, whatever. Tell me a story. I was DM'd 3-4 hours by a transgendered male, whatever that, I mean, he presented as a female, and he was super good. Loved the dude's DMing. It was really good, showing us this there was a table. I think I told you once, there was a table there, and it was about 4 foot by 4 foot, and it was a computer screen, and he was showing the software off, but he ran a great game. And I was like, get over yourself. And nobody blinked an eye. Nobody got their panties in a wad. A lot of this stuff just makes me feel like, why am I wasting my money? Because the hobby just feels like it's outside of the OSR. I feel so disconnected from what people are saying about the hobby that sometimes, I'll be honest with you, I don't even want to do this anymore.
Right. I get that.
There's a moment I would want to podcast. I don't want to buy new games. I just want to turn this stuff off, quit turtle up and just play my games, ones that I like, and play them, because it can get so damn annoying. There's only so long you can be called a fascist, a misogynist, a homophobe, whatever. They have 47,000 names for you, and they don't even know you.
Right. The evidence for it being a boys club and a white guys club is that white guys invented the game.
Okay.
And largely white people played it in its initial, the early days. So that's their evidence. Yep. That's it. So because white people and guys made this, it's obviously
misogynistic, and it's racist.
And I wish I could find a link to it. I can't even remember. I'm not even sure what search terms to use to find it. There was a college professor who did research, quote unquote, talked to people, learned how to play D&D, and then wrote his, I think, either master's or PhD. Might not have been a college professor, maybe. I can't remember.
Maybe he was a graduate student about to become a professor, so he got wrote his PhD thesis on it.
So either a master's or PhD thesis on gaming's racist, sexist roots. And one of the things he cited was the white box books, which are black and white line drawings, and they're all white guys depicted, right?
Which is not true.
Which
is a lie.
Yeah,
I can prove it today. I can prove it. It's a lie.
It's a lie.
There's a turban wearing guy on page 2 or 3. Fact.
Right. And then we had one of it's a white guy. It's colored white. It's white. It's a black and white drawing.
Yeah, dude, they couldn't afford color. They weren't that good artists. They literally had a 14-year-old do some of the early drawings.
Right. I mean, they weren't terribly sophisticated drawings. Kind of like clip art. A little bit better than clip art.
And there was chainmail bikini and on Eldritch Wizardry, there was a naked chick on an altar. Dude, it's dudes doing it.
Right.
Sorry. I mean, I don't think it's okay, but I mean, I wouldn't choose to do that, but get over yourself. They probably
Right,
also
right.
think Boris Vallejo is definitely misogynistic just because he draws a lot of naked women.
Right, right. So I think we found 2 or 3 of those drawings in that book. They're not depicting white people.
No, they're
depicting
not.
various cultures.
Complete lie.
And so, one of the earliest books, I think Player's Handbook, I have up here, the forward in it.
Mm-hmm.
And it was written in 1987, I think.
Mm-hmm. Player's Handbook
Where
2.
it talks about how great and diverse and inclusive back in 1987 our game is, because we like everybody. We want everybody to play.
Dude, I was talking with my buddies. We're nerds for the most part, at least that, and we were kind of the outcasts, to be honest, in society. We are the last to be picky and choosy about who wants to sit down and play D&D at our table.
I think one of the hallmarks of the nerd is that we want people to like us.
Yep.
And one of the socially awkward things about a lot of nerds is that we so want people to like us, it's difficult to be
for them to like us.
No.
Because
we're awkward about it.
Yeah.
Please like us, because
Yep.
we want to have friends. We want to be friends with people.
Yep.
We don't want to point at them and say, "Oh, you're different from me, so I'm going to hate you."
No.
No.
Dude, people come in wearing those fox little headbands where they got little fox ears, and your wife, I think, has one of those little things.
Yeah.
And people come dressed in
No. She has like 10 of them.
Okay, whatever. So people come, yeah, that's what I'm saying. They sit down and wear that, or somebody comes in and they're got their pointy hat. We know somebody's got a pointy hat.
Yes,
he likes to wear sometimes. And it's like, yeah, we're goofy and we're nerdy. We play nerdy games, and we want everybody else to enjoy it with us. I mean, I'm not saying you don't find people that are smelly. You don't find people that are like hardcore, not nice. They like to use the term gatekeeper, but kinda, you got to play my way or the highway. You find guys that want to hit on the first woman that sits down. Sure you do. But I got news for you. You think that's different when you go to a bar?
Right.
Seriously?
Or any social situation.
Yes.
Right.
Get over yourself.
Find your jerks.
Has crappy things happened to women? Right. Sure. Have it happened to guys? Sure. Has someone probably been put down for however they dress or act? Sure. But guess what? It happens everywhere. And I would bet a paycheck it happens less at the gaming table than it does every other social situation, right. Pretty much anywhere.
Yeah, I think the other part of the game that gets lefties, progressive lefties,
right,
gets their panties in a bunch, is that the underpinnings of the game and the you look at the book list in the DMG, earlier DMGs. Most of the writing is in a Western tradition.
Yep.
And of course, the Western tradition is poo-pooed on. You can't be, if you are a fan of the Western tradition, you are by definition a bad person.
No, get over yourself.
Yeah. So
I don't want to run a campaign where all I have is African peoples and Asian peoples and their gods, and we're going to do all their cultures. You know why I don't want to? Because I don't know it.
Right.
And honestly, I love the Western culture because I was raised in it, and even the European cultures, the Anglo-Saxon Roman cultures. I'm drawn to it, not because I hate black people, and it's not that I couldn't have a African type setting somewhere, or I couldn't have an Asian setting, or I couldn't have, there could be black and Asian people that are mixed in the races. I just, in the different cities and places, it just may not be a thing. Look at Galarion. It's a cosmopolitan everywhere you look. So it's like, I don't care, but just because I have a predilection for one thing, don't call me a racist or a homophobe or this. I got time for all that crap. I'm not interested in people like that. Are just small-minded.
Right. Right. That's why it's leading into race in the game. We don't want to even use the word race. I know there's people who prefer species or whatever.
That one actually bothered me a lot less. None of them bother me. Species I actually get. I kind of agree with that.
But species doesn't work in D&D.
Why not?
Not to some degree, because you have half elves. If elf
so
and human are different species,
unless
they're not made.
well, they're not in a standard world. Maybe some species. I mean, how did centaurs come about? I mean, you could say in your world, a human had sex with a horse. I don't know. It's fantasy time. I mean, yeah, I know it's disgusting. My point is, yeah, but I can live with that because I do feel like an elf.
You got to pick a word.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing wrong with the word race.
Nothing, and it's pretty darn accurate. It's
if you can figure out a better word,
yeah,
fine.
Ancestry is not. It has nothing to do. How is that? I don't even know what they're trying to say. Maybe they're just replacing. I don't know. I don't get it.
Okay, ancestry might work, but the only reason they're using ancestry is because they don't like the word race. That really is all there is to it.
Right.
But in Pathfinder, but so the 5th edition has this thing with the Candlekeep Mysteries, a book, or maybe it's a different book where they're. I think it's no. I don't know. I can't remember off the top of my head. In any event, anybody of any race can have any racial ability from any other race.
Mm-hmm.
It's all you just pick what shape your character is in, and you can pick everything else.
I think you're talking about Tasha's cauldron of everything.
Right. So it's stupid.
I do too. I mean, I don't get it. I mean, so every single person is a unique snowflake.
Right.
That's not true. Dumb. That's dumb. Now, people are different. I agree. You can have a strong elf. You can have a weak dwarf. It's possible. But I mean, I don't know. If you're going to play a game and, if it's going to have a mechanical, I don't know. It just seems silly. Because if you let every race have every modifier, any 2 modifiers they want to any ability, or just say, here's a list of powers, improvision, fast movement, magical aptitude, immunity to sleep, +2 to strength, +2 to your favorite ability score. And if you just pick and choose, then ancestry means nothing. Race means nothing. We're just individual snowflakes.
Right. And if it doesn't matter how big you are to what weapon you can use, which is stupid.
It's stupid. And I'm going to blame anime for that. People
right.
are too fond of anime.
Right. I mean, if there's a fantastic element to the reason why you can wield a 20-foot long sword,
right?
That's one thing. But if a halfling can wield a great sword with 2 hands, and do the same damage as a human with a great sword in 2 hands, there's a problem with that.
I want to meet the halfling that can wield a 6-foot sword.
Yeah.
Get out of here.
No, it's not going to happen.
No. So I want to meet the kid who can wield a 6-foot sword.
No,
a little 3 foot tall kid.
Right. It's like gravity, right?
Mm-hmm.
Physical. There are some things in the real world that should probably bleed over into the fantastic, into the D&D world, because they make some sense. If you're bigger and stronger, you use bigger and heavier things. If you're tiny, if you're an elf, there's a rejection of an elf having intrinsic abilities that are different from humans' intrinsic nature. So the intrinsic nature of an elf is different from the intrinsic nature of a human, and that's rejected. There's no such thing as intrinsic nature. Right. That's a leftist type of thinking.
Unless you're a white male, then you're intrinsically a homophobe, a Nazi, and a racist. But yeah, that's true. I agree. And look, if you want to play Tasha's Cauldron style, if you want to play, just pick your favorite race, build it however you like, and you can call yourself whatever you want. I'm a wood elf, but I'm 7 foot tall. I have the strength of a Goliath. I have the speed of a gazelle, and I can have dark vision like a dark elf. But I call myself wood elf. You do whatever you want. It's your game. But I ain't rolling like that.
Mm-hmm.
It just seems stupid. It doesn't seem like. And look, people, if you like it, you like it. If you like anime swords, you like wielding 17-foot swords, go ahead. Just like if you like playing really silly gonzo games that don't have any meaning, and you have names like Pickpock the Halfling, and Goober Man the Wizard. It's like, you do whatever you want. But I just It's not for me. And that stuff doesn't bother me really if you're just doing it to your game, but it feels like they're just trying to make the game as being, I don't know, I think it's being ripped to shreds in many ways. D&D is.
They're making it into some kind of version of not Powerpuff Girls. That had a little bit of okayness to it.
It did. It was
like,
pretty good.
More like we're going to play Strawberry Shortcake.
I know, it's so dumb. But like this week, it really crossed my mind as I was looking at my Deadlands box that I got in, and I've been regretting back in the Pathfinder starter set. I'm in the Savage Worlds Pathfinder. I actually regret that I did that. Not just because of the potential wokitude of it. That wasn't that bad. I just don't think I'm done with Savage Worlds. And by that, I mean, I'm not done playing it. I can't envision me buying another edition of it ever. I will not be upgrading any version of that game again. And I don't dislike, some completely like Pinnacle. I respect them. But, and I think about it again, I want to say I won't buy another version of D&D. I won't, because it's probably going to be something I find distasteful politically. There's going to be some kind of bull crap that's going to be in there that's going to annoy the crap out of me, just like Pathfinder 2 did with their little preview edition. And I was really thinking, that's when I was like, maybe I got all I need, you know, and it's time for Randy to just put his wallet away, because there's not much. If I buy anything, it's going to be old stuff.
Right.
That's what I think. I think I'm about there.
Yeah. And if it's either that or we make our own thing.
Yeah. Which I'm leaning toward that, just because I think I was very intimidated there for a while, even in the podcast, and we were talking about all these ideas. I feel like I want to start almost from the original game and just build up and build up and build up. And I just want to pull whatever I like from other editions and create this Frankenstein monster. And I don't think it's going to be as bad as I thought, because I'm not going to make it like this intricate rule system like third edition. And it's not going to be, look, everybody's just a fighting man, magic user, and cleric, and they all do the same stuff, kind of. Like, they don't, but it feels like that a little bit in the white box. I'm going to be somewhere in between, you know?
Right.
And so, and I think I can take bits and pieces. I think it's very possible to do that. And I think I'm kind of ready. Though, I'll be honest with you, I do enjoy playing 5th edition. I like 5e. It's not my favorite version of D&D. You talk to me one day, my favorite is 2nd edition. You talk to me a second day, my favorite edition is 3rd edition. And 5e is usually in the discussion, because I do think it plays pretty smoothly when you're at the table. It plays pretty smoothly, but it has its warts, you know. So, but I don't think we could build that as a building block. I don't think so.
Right.
Well,
so one thing other that I wanted to mention is the silliness in the comic book world. I'm not a collector, but the thing that just came out was, and there's probably more than this, but this is what I heard, was with Captain America and with the Red Skull being, they ripped off dialogue from Jordan Peterson, which the
Ta-Nehisi Coates, or whatever his name is. Yeah, he's a racist.
Yeah,
there's no two ways about it.
Nope,
the man's
no
ridiculous. Comic books they're horrible. DC, I told you before, is going to be down to 6 comics in a couple of months. Marvel's going to follow suit. They're eating themselves. They're destroying themselves. I think comic book reading is going away.
Well,
I hate to say it, but I think it is.
Well, it's definitely diminishing.
And I think I really should, because there's probably some good independent comics out there. I probably should seek those, because I can't read modern comics, DC or Marvel.
Right, mainstream comics. The fellow that I at least introduced tangentially, Eric July. Yeah, he talks about comics a lot, and that's who I found out this story from.
Yeah,
mentioning in a podcast he was in recently. An indie comic guy, I can't remember his name. I missed it somehow when they were talking. Yeah. And he's got a comic in the works himself.
Yes, I know. I'll probably pick that up.
So indie comics is probably the way to go. But what I thought was great about it was after all of that, instead of apologizing for being or backing down or doing a lot of things that people do when they're accused of being a bad person from the left, Jordan Peterson stepped in.
Yeah, he did. Lobster.
He released on Twitter, he posted, I don't know where he got the graphic from,
right.
but so whoever made it for him, it was a Hydra style graphic of a lobster, and he titled it, he captioned it "Hail Lobster."
You know, Eric July called him this, and not in a negative way.
Right.
The left, the super left, gets so upset with Jordan Peterson. He's milk toast, dude. He is non-threatening, and just because words come out of his mouth that are reasonable, that he wants a man, don't say words. They're violence.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, please. I ain't got time for that. None.
I mean, I'm not in lockstep with Jordan Peterson.
No, me neither.
But the most important thing that he says, I think one way you can, he says, clean your room.
Yep.
And another way to put that is, before you complain about the world, straighten yourself out. Get yourself straight. And it's biblical.
Yep.
You know,
boom.
The mote in your brother's eye.
Right.
Don't worry about it.
Get that log out of yours.
Yeah. So
yep.
Clean yourself up, get your own life straight. And most of the time when you do get your life straight, you're not, while you're getting it straight, and once you have gotten it straight, you're not going to have time to criticize the rest of the world and try to make it conform to your bidding.
And his book about the 12 steps, where I haven't read it yet, but I know one of them is get up and make your bed every day. And he's being literal.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, because he wants you to be disciplined, because a man should be disciplined. Oh, that's another problem. He believes men and women are different only because they are. Anybody that said otherwise is literally living in a dream world. I don't care what the science is.
Yes, intrinsic nature. Anyone who espouses an intrinsic nature to men or to women, they are bad people. Yeah. To the left. Yeah. And you can't do that. That's bled over to our game with the races.
Yes, it has.
And it's been actually, if you think about it, if you remember Dragon Magazine articles from way back in the day,
yep,
where they were talking about why should we always say he when referring to people, pronouns in our articles and whatnot.
Right. Why not she?
And because that's how you write. And you don't go he some places in your body of work and she in other places. If it's ambiguous, you say them or they, because that's how you do.
Yep. But
he is the accepted non-gendered way of talking about people. I can't remember, there's a terminology for it. The standard English, which is racist, apparently.
Of course, yeah. Has to be. Well, and also don't forget, it's good, it's the best for mankind. Oh, wait a minute. Did I say mankind? What about womankind? Oh, get over it. Just shut up.
You can't say woman because it has man in it. You got to have a Y in there, or I, or some other.
Mine. Well, I tell you what, I think we're kind of going off the deep end here. This might be enough for this segment. We should wrap this up, I guess, and call it good. So
that's fine.
Hope you enjoyed it, folks, because there'll be more coming. We're gonna tell it like it is.
Yes, this is a 3-hour behemoth.
Love it. Have a good night.
Bye.